All right, bummer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the August 27th Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting is being televised on Whitman Hanson Cable Access Television. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a jam-packed agenda and a star-studded cast this evening to walk us through the agenda. We're starting off with Superintendent Jeff Simonek. Welcome, we're thrilled to have you, and we've got you on the agenda to discuss school funding calculations.
Yeah, with the announcements.
Oh, huh?
With the announcements.
All right, well,
We'll do it later.
yeah.
Thank you for having me.
So far, we haven't started yet. Official day is first day tomorrow. But one of my goals this year, after I met with school committee at the end of last year, was being as upfront with the Hanson Selectmen as inquisitive as the Whitman Selectmen have been. I spoke to the Whitman Selectmen during the budget process last year, and my committee members from Hanson said, look, can you talk to our selectmen occasionally, especially when things are coming out when you're talking about budget and as things roll out. So today I want to discuss with you, and I had a conversation with Mary and Todd already, regarding the regional agreement. The regional agreement for both for the regional school district was approved in June of 2018 by the school committee and presented to the townspeople of Hanson, I believe in November of 18, and that regional agreement was approved. In the spring of this year, as you know, it was a difficult budget process. The regional agreement was passed over at the Whitman Town Meeting. So I started asking some questions about why the regional agreement was passed over. And the issue around funding came up. I don't know if that was necessarily the reason it wasn't passed over in Whitman, but the regional, the reason the agreement wasn't passed over and funding came up. There are two methodologies of funding a regional school district. It's called the alternative method and the statutory method. Our regional school district has been funded through the alternative method since 1991. What I found out in 2007, a recommendation from DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, made a recommendation that all regional school districts start using the statutory method. We did not change. In the 2018 regional agreement, it is inferred that we use the statutory method. It is not written statutory, but the methodology and the formula that is in the agreement that was passed in Hanson is the statutory method. The statutory method takes into account the minimum local school contribution. And the local minimum school contribution was not taken into account in the alternative method. In that, and let me just get my notes right here, the minimum local contribution affects the town of Hanson in the fact that they might be paying more. And that's what I wanted to bring to this committee. The minimum local contribution takes into account inflation, enrollment, wage adjustment, and the DESE does a wage adjustment, property values, income, and municipal revenue growth. We have not taken that into account in the alternative method. The alternative method used the assessment from the prior year, the level of fund, based upon per pupil or per pupils, and kept it the same. And then we would come to you and say, this is where our gap is, and we would ask for an assessment. The local minimum contribution, again, affects Hanson, and it's a substantial swing. I haven't done the exact numbers for 19 and 20, I have a rough estimate, but I wanted to bring to the selectmen, as I brought to Mary and Todd, that this regional agreement will affect Hanson, that they will owe more in the school budget moving forward for FY21. I submitted questions to our legal counsel because we don't have a signed agreement from the town of Whitman yet, right now. And because of that 2007 recommendation, he said we would be defaulting to the statutory method until a regional agreement was signed or was approved in both communities. So I wanted to bring that to you. So we weren't doing budget in October, November, December. and said, and dropped a bomb, so to speak, on the town of Hanson. This is something I had no idea. Nobody discussed the regional agreement with me as a new superintendent last year until May, when I started asking some questions. I don't know if members of the regional agreement committee knew that the statutory method was going to have an impact on the town of Hanson as drastic as it has. I don't know if in 2007, when this recommendation came about, that both communities were more similar and property values were more or less, maybe it was more equitable. But it's a discussion that we will have at school committee tomorrow moving forward, but I wanted to have the opportunity to speak to the selectmen, or just put you on notice. And I worked with Mary and Todd, and when we spoke to Todd said, well, yeah, that's the statutory agreement. Todd's pretty proficient in the statutory method. So that's where we are right now. I still don't have a voted regional agreement in the town of Whitman. I have one in the town of Hanson. So right now I have nothing binding both communities except for the 1991 regional agreement, which our attorney said might be negated because we don't have a signed agreement in both towns. We can go back to the drawing board and look at it, but I still think that the methodology of funding using the statutory method is going to be the one that's suggested by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that's going to be the one that we're going to be using.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes, I understand.
So, a couple of questions.
Sure.
You're saying it's suggested by DESI in 2007, not required, but that legal counsel is telling you now, by virtue of not having the deal signed with Whitman, that it's gonna, basically, you guys are gonna invoke the statutory one. What kind of dollar amount? I heard roughly 900,000, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is Whitman in getting to a place where they're comfortable signing? And if it's...
Whitman hasn't discussed putting the regional agreement on a fall ballot yet.
Okay.
I'm on a committee called the Whitman Override Committee to assess whether or not they need an override in town. The committee right now is really looking at investigating their finances. They hired a consultant yesterday, or they're moving forward with a consultant to really do a town audit or needs assessment based upon where they could be in 5 years. But they haven't put anything on a fall town meeting as far as this regional agreement.
Okay. And Mary, are we having our legal counsel look at this as well?
I sent that off to Jay. He did review it. We had some discussion about, there was, in one paragraph, it talked about the alternative method, and then reading 2 or 3 paragraphs down, it refers to the statutory method. Jay didn't believe that, he thought the statutory method would be the method that the new regional agreement would follow. But he is aware of a situation like this. One of his other communities has gone through a similar situation. So he wants to, once we hear back from the schools council, he'll discuss it, but he thought that, the statutory method will be what we're gonna have to use.
Okay, well, we really need to know this sooner rather than later for planning purposes, because that's a significant amount of money.
It is.
And we have no magical way of making that money appear. So we'll have some tough budgetary decisions. Guys, did anybody have any questions?
So how does that affect Whitman, Jeff? Their numbers are gonna go down and ours are gonna go up based on property values?
Based on income and growth, at least, and these are numbers that I don't determine. DESI determines these numbers for each community in each region. So yes, right now it looks like Whitman will be paying less and Hanson will be paying more.
Even though they have more pupils than we do?
Correct. It's based upon, as I said, the non-negotiables. So we also had a person come in, his name's Richard Hatch, I forgot his first name, he's a retired DESI mathematician. And he came in and explained this to me, because this was another language to myself and to Mr. Farrow. And he said, you have no control over this is how DESI looks at these figures. And they look at inflation, enrollment, the wages, property values, incomes, and your growth potential within your community. So those numbers can fluctuate year to year. This is something, so the old assessment sheet that we used to show goes away. The chart that we showed at school committee meetings. DESI will then give us our numbers. We will provide you the numbers in January based upon Chapter 70 in the governor's budget projected numbers, and we will give the towns what their minimum contribution is in this. I'm becoming more of a master of this. I'm still a novice as questions roll out. I'm still working with our council to firm up, is there a piece that if this is a shift, that it's gradual rather than a one, all of a sudden you owe $1 million next year, can you pay, 800 of that, and then as it goes, as it shifts? I'm not sure. There has been discussion with the Mass Association of Regional Schools, and there's a gradual flow to make sure things are equitable and it's not a one-time shot, or a big chunk right up front. But that's the challenge of working with this over the summer with all of our councils. Is it's summer and everybody takes 2 to 3 weeks off for vacation. So I was waiting for our attorney for 3 weeks on this piece, and he got back to us today, or earlier this week. So
I'm going to take Mr. Hayes and then Mr. Sullivan.
Laura, this isn't unique to the Hanson School District. This is popping up with regional agreements across the state. As you can see, every attorney has a different opinion on it, but it looks like it's going to fall over onto the statutory method. And the changes in it are going to be, if I had to guess, and I think Jeff and I may be on the same page, it's going to be challenged from attorneys' point of view.
Yeah, I'm sure. I guess the net result, is that going to be a net increase in the overall amount that the district is getting, all the recognizing that Whitman's going to decrease and Hanson's going to increase? I'm just wondering if the net is going to be an overall increase to the
It's the
district.
charge, Laura, it's the 60-40 split's going to remain the
I
same.
get that. What I'm asking is, regardless of the 60-40, are you guys going to be getting more money at the end of the day when you combine what we're putting in and what Whitman's putting in?
From the state?
From us
From
and
us.
from the
So
state?
it would be, it would be your assessment over minimum. So if if our budget was 53 this year, the split would still be a 60-40 split, but broken up different ways. It's not going to be more than the budget we asked for, so to speak. It's just a different way to fund it. So in turn, for FY20, Whitman would have paid about $960,000 less. Hanson would have paid $960,000 more for the dollar amount that we received this year.
Okay, so it's going to be a net zero change overall.
It's just a split between the two
Mr.
towns.
Sullivan?
Correct.
So is this new method mandatory, the standard method?
That's what
Or
we-
do we have an opportunity, because we don't have an agreement right now, can we go back and craft our own based on our original calculations of the 60-40 split or whatever the population base, go to a more strictly population based?
So that's in the hands of council right now. The state doesn't mandate how you,
So the state doesn't mandate what method we use?
correct. There is an alternative
So we
method.
can avoid the agreement at town meeting and enter into a new negotiation where we base it purely on population, in theory.
In theory. And in theory, if that isn't voided and you don't have one, I don't know if it defaults, as Mary would say, if it defaults to statutory, if you don't have a signed agreement in either town, if it just defaults to that. And that's the $1 million question right now, and I can't answer that. My counsel said probably. That's the route, and I think that's what Mary is saying. So I'd like a firm answer from both, and that's why I'm
So
here.
you're saying probably, but I think actually you maybe might have said something a little bit different there. Because Kevin's saying if we void that contract, would that give us a chance to do something different? But you're saying in the absence of a contract, which essentially we're in that state right now because Whitman hasn't signed it, then the default is going to be statutory anyway.
So this is from my attorney on August 21st. If the new regional agreement is not approved by the town of Whitman, I think you need to use the statutory method. As we discussed several weeks ago, the way the language is worded, the default option is statutory unless the parties expressly agree otherwise, or unless they approve a budget based upon a different method. So if the district wanted to use something other than statutory, it would have to get either explicit approval per the DESI memo, or have a budget approved that is based on different calculations. So there is a way, I believe. I think it involves discussion quite a bit. One of the things in that statute, in the new regional agreement, and I showed it to Mary, it doesn't explicitly say use of the statutory method. It talks about an alternative method, but then the calculation next 2 paragraphs over specifically goes to the statutory. So I find as a superintendent, that's a flaw in that agreement. Whether it's binding or not, it's something that, in my eyes, as a new person coming in, it's gray. However, this DESI memo from 2007 throws another light into that piece. And I don't know if the parties around the table, when they were doing the regional agreement in 2017, discussed funding and how that might shift. Again, I wasn't part of that group, and it didn't really specifically say in the minutes how that would change, specifically statutory or alternative.
I certainly wasn't part of that group. I think you were.
Yep.
And I think when we were given a highlight of the items that were changing in the agreement, that certainly was not called out. You know, again, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but you don't recall any discussion on it.
None,
Yeah.
none.
So,
Yeah.
and you know, the only absence that I have is it went through all councils. I think it went through school council, it went through Hanson Council, and it went through Whitman Council. So, again, I looked at that contract and that agreement, and there's an alternative method, but it defers to the statutory method 2 paragraphs later as the implied way to fund the schools. In one respect, I hate to be here today. I would have hoped that the town would have had an understanding of that, as I've learned over the past 2 months. Again, I'm coming in cold, and I wanted to let you know as soon as I could that there might be a challenge or a change, and I would expect that you would have your council looking at this as well.
Okay, we definitely appreciate the heads up. We appreciate being told about it. Mr. Duggan?
Just one question. In your email that you were just reading, it says something along the lines of, in absence of budgets already approved. Can you give us any sort of clarification of, are we talking about the next year's budget going forward? Or is there any likelihood that any challenges would be, saying, the year that we're in now that just started?
I think right now we're looking at fiscal '21, and we have a set budget that's been approved by both communities right now. So not going backwards, but
We're
moving
not doing
forward.
retroactive.
No.
That's not on the table right now.
That's what
Okay.
and I had a couple of off-the-cuff conversations with selectmen in Whitman, and nobody's looking back. Everybody's looking forward. They're looking to work with this. I know members of their community have talked about this assessment agreement. There was some conversation regarding low income and per pupil expenditures and things like that, and I think those were taken out of context. We talk about the minimum local contribution, and that's set by the department, and that fluctuates town to town, and that can fluctuate year to year.
Yeah, I think retroactive would be a kamikaze mission for all involved. One I certainly don't want to be involved in. Guys, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
question, Jeff.
Sure.
And I would like to go back in history. And I have no idea if you did this or not, but now you've called it a DESI memo.
Yes.
And when that came out, and some regional school districts decided to take advantage of that memo. Do you know how many did?
That I don't know.
Okay, so in 2007, when that came out, the Whitman-Hanson School Committee decided not to take that recommendation.
I assume I can't speak for the committee. I don't know if it ever got to the committee. It went to the
Okay.
superintendent at the time.
And that's why I would be looking for the school committee minutes when that memo came out, and why it was not recommended at the time, because if they did it then, we wouldn't have this problem now.
Well, I think at the time they were recommending,
Yes.
but it wasn't required. And now it seems as though, as time has gone on, it's becoming a firmer position that DESI's taking. That's what I'm getting from
The
this.
way the memo was read and the way it was presented to me is, it's the law. And when I read the memo, it was a recommendation. So when and it does refer to MGL dash whatever, and that's why I referred it to our council. And he said, Jeff, it's a recommendation, but it seems like the preferred recommendation from DESI. And I have to, when DESI usually recommends, that means it's in effect. You know, as a superintendent, they make a lot of recommendations, and we call them unfunded mandates, and it becomes a mandate. I don't see that yet, but I know that the case Mary had mentioned, I think it's Dennis Yarmouth, and they're having, or are having the similar conversations regarding the regional agreement and the statutory versus the alternative method. I'm happy to come back anytime you need me to. with information. I will continue this conversation, and if you have questions for us, I'm very happy to. We're going to discuss it at school committee again tomorrow night. But I wanted to get you early on in the budget cycle. We're starting to have conversations already about fiscal '21. I wanted to let you know what I have on my plate right now and how this might affect the community in Hanson.
Mr. Sullivan?
So I guess this is a question for you all. Is this something that we need to put on October and revoke the contract, the agreement we signed?
When you
Because it sounds
made
like
that
we-
suggestion, I thought, okay.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I
Yeah.
know Mary's trying to close the warrant, and we're making more work for her, but I mean, if we don't revoke the agreement we have in place, we could be locked into this right now. So, to me, it would make sense to,
At the
We'll
very
close
least,
the
we could
warrant.
put a placeholder in.
Right, put something
And
in
while we've got both sets of council looking at
Right.
it, we're getting opinions.
especially where it sounds ambiguous at best as to which the method is that you all agree to.
I
Just
think-
something to think about.
Yeah, I think it is something to think about, because we are, it's quite timely, closing the warrant this evening, so we can have a discussion
Yeah, we need to
about
get
that.
recommendation from Jay,
Yeah,
You,
you know?
before you close it, you can,
Just put-
add an article on.
Yep.
We can have it there. If we act on it, we act on it. If you, it's easier to have it on than not.
I think it's,
So-
I agree, it allows us to be, to pivot if we need to, right? Depending upon what council comes back with, and then if we've got a challenge, then we've got an option to do that. But if we don't put it in there, and then things just start steamrolling, we could be in a really unenviable position in May.
Right.
So, Mr. Hayes.
Also, I was a minute or two late. We've got a water bill issue too.
Yes.
A $300,000 water bill issue that the town of Whitman supplies the district with water.
Excuse me, did you say 300,000?
300,000. And that would be a 60-40 split. Desi doesn't get involved. So consequently, it's still something that we didn't budget for. They have sent us several different bills. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. They're trying to get it right. They're saying their calculations were wrong. And
Is this retroactive?
this is
How
retroactive
far back?
to the date of the high school bill,
2004.
which is 14 years.
So our council has looked at that, and there is a past legal case where you go back 7 years. But I was presented with a $300,000 plus water bill for misreading the high school water and sewer meter for 15 years.
That's a heck of an error.
It's a heck of an error, and it says human error on the bill. So it's with our council, again, and I have kind of kicked that can down, because I think this is a bigger issue right now than the water bill.
Yes,
I don't mean
yeah.
to say anything about the water department, but there's a new water superintendent in Whitman who presented that to me. He was handed that in February, he presented that to me in May. So I mentioned it to school committee in June. We briefly talked about it in July. It's something that I have with council, and there was a situation in Natick and Framingham where they had a similar situation, and I just wanted to look at statutory, how far back you can go to collect something that's human error. What I put in front, or what I passed out there is the formula, and on that second page, that's FY20, that's this school year. If you look at using, on that second page down the bottom, the Hanson FY20 current assessment using the current method was 9,670,975. Using the statutory method, it would have been 10,718,657 with a difference of 1,047,682.
Okay.
Okay?
So,
Just so that you have an idea of this, and how it's broken down.
is there any good news you guys want to share with
We're
us?
opening school tomorrow.
Okay.
I love our police and fire department, they've been great. All our DPW services and everything in the community, the level of service that I get from the local EMS, the highway, has been phenomenal. Communication over this last year, as first-year superintendent, as far as opening school, closing school, having any issues, has been great. Jerry and Mike have been top-notch anytime we've needed something, so that's a positive. And I think the relationship that we have here, and this is why I'm comfortable talking to you, and I think the committee members from Hanson, when they said, talk to the selectmen, they want to know more, they don't want to get caught off. I will be here as much as I can. If there are curveballs or just fastballs that you need to know as we come up into our budget cycle. So That's what
We
I-
do appreciate you bringing the information, as painful as it is, and we hope that, we can come to, some kind of a reasonable, arrangement that doesn't involve us coming up with over $1 million. But we'll, take it under advisement, and I guess, Mary, we'll just have our attorneys
Yeah,
work
that
with
would-
their attorneys and keep it on as an agenda item, because it's something we really need to
Stay
keep
on
an
top
eye
of it,
on.
yeah.
Yep.
I just have a quick question. Now, each year when you did the budget, did the school committee vote to use the alternative method when they were doing the budgeting or the assessment?
It was never,
In the change, when,
No, just as part of one of the things I
Not
had
that I-
read, or something that was, maybe I heard it from council, was that each year when you use the alternative method, the school committee is supposed to vote to use the alternative method?
I don't ever recall it being done.
I don't, and sitting at budget meetings for the past 10 years,
Okay.
I don't ever
I don't
remember
ever
hear
recall that being brought
it
up.
being brought up. My concern is that that memo from 2007 was never brought out. You know,
We've got minutes for all of it,
yeah.
we can look back. We want to keep you abreast of everything.
We appreciate that, we really do,
that's going
guys.
on. You
Yeah,
come whenever you.
yep.
And thank you
Other
for
than
your
that, we had opening day.
Yeah,
It
opening
was
day for
fabulous.
teachers is good.
Look like a lot of happy campers there today.
Tomorrow's the first day of school.
Yep.
Everybody drives slow. The buses will be out in the morning and the afternoon again.
And they'll be going slow because of kids and first time. And we've asked parents a little, and I'll shoot something out on Twitter and Facebook, take your pictures of your kids getting on the bus quickly, because you're holding up,
Yeah.
you're holding up the routes. So everybody's got a good shot, but I appreciate your time. And if you have questions for me, and if you need a copy of the regional agreement, I can send, I don't know, Mary, you have a copy?
I have a copy,
yes.
Just get it out.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yep,
Was that for you or to me?
I think it was for you. I don't know. Anyway.
What's next?
Okay, up next, we've got FXM Consulting, but I do not see the gentleman
see
from
him yet.
FXM Consulting. So I think we're going to shake things up just a tad, and since we've got Chief Mix and Todd Hassett here, I thought perhaps if you guys will indulge me, that we'll bump them up on priority,
Yes.
and then, okay, great. With that, Mr. Hassett, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, good evening. I believe in your packet, I've provided about a 4-page handout. It's actually two-page, separate two-page handouts. And I just would like to briefly review this with the board.
Thank you, Todd.
So the first 2 pages are a result of operations from a budget to actual standpoint for fiscal 19. Our year ended June 30th. And on page 1, the exhibit shows our general fund, which is our main operating fund. Results of operation, revenues and expenditures, followed to the right by the water fund separately, and on the second page, the recreation fund and the solid waste fund. So just quickly, with respect to the general fund, our overall revenues have exceeded budget by $550,000. You can see we did particularly well with excise taxes and licenses and permit revenue. I will tell the board there is one pending receipt from the Commonwealth that has not been specifically identified by the Department of Revenue yet, so I actually will have one more adjustment to hopefully increase the intergovernmental revenue
Is it
line.
sizable, or?
It could be about $82,000.
Okay.
That's the, and I've been chasing it since mid-July. With respect to our expenditures, you'll see in each of the major functional areas, we did have budget returns, about $138,000 from the general government sector, nearly $300,000 in public safety, and so on. So our overall budget returns for the year are just over $800,000. So we did have a favorable budget year with respect to the general fund. The water fund, quickly, revenues exceeded estimates by 105,000, and they had about 130,000 of unused budget. So they're ending the year with a what we refer to as a surplus that's going to be in the neighborhood of 885,000, which is sort of like the retained earnings we talk about with recreation and solid waste. On the second page, recreation, as you'll recall, in the spring at the special town meeting, we did have to subsidize the program because we knew that actual revenues were trailing the estimates. And so town meeting did need and did approve a subsidy. So that turned out successful in terms of getting them through the year without having any sort of statutory revenue deficit or shortfall, which would have potentially been pushed back on the taxpayers. Their equity at year end is just over 65,000, some of which we may be considering using at the upcoming special town meeting under Article 3. The solid waste program, the revenues, as you'll see, came in fairly close to our estimate, within $5,000. They were just under a bit, and expenses turned out favorably, although we do have about $6,000 of unpaid bills that you'll see on Article 1 for the October town meeting. And as we go forward with solid waste in particular, I know we have contract changes coming up in November that we anticipated increased costs. And the revenue's been fairly flat for a few years. And that also overall was balanced with an $87,000 subsidy from the general fund. So that's very quick, but overall, you know, we had a good year. A little challenge with the enterprises. Water is still fairly strong. The general fund had a good year. We anticipate having a healthy certified free cash for the October town meeting. The second two-page handout I thought might be of interest to the board, and at another time we can maybe talk in a little more detail, but I know each time I like to try to bring up another financial topic other than just how we're doing with the budget. And for this quarter, I chose to highlight the Community Preservation Fund. And this is one of the reports that we're required to file with the Department of Revenue. And just high level, quickly, it shows that we brought in about just over $250,000 in revenue, some of which was state money. Almost 40,000 was state funds. The rest was through the CPA surcharge added to the property tax bills. They spent just under $40,000 and have an ending equity, which is disclosed in detail on the second page, the top of the second page, of over $1.8 million.
Unallocated?
Unallocated is $1,336,000, and there are reserves that can be voted by town meeting for specific purposes related to open space, nearly $130,000, historic resources, $98,000, and community affordable housing, $185,000. But there's $1.3 million in essentially undesignated fund balance.
Which is fantastic.
So it's-
They've done a
yes.
good job of stretching the dollar, and I know they're getting
Yep.
ready to probably do some stuff at the
Yes,
Plymouth County
right.
Hospital and maybe
Exactly.
Camp Kawani and that type of thing.
So I thought this would be
Yeah.
important for the board to be aware of.
That's great. And do you mind if I put you on the spot a bit, and hopefully you can clear the cobwebs from your mind of a discussion that we had about a month and a half ago?
Sure.
Just to queue up for the guys, a discussion that we had regarding the Capital Improvement Committee and some
Okay.
ideas that you had around that.
Sure. So we did have an internal discussion about possibly looking at changing the mix of the participation in the process to involve some of the major departments, such as the schools, the water department, perhaps the planning board, to go through a sort of an internal process to sort of prioritize and have a more cohesive effort in developing a townwide capital plan and help prioritize what we're able to fund.
So I think we had discussed like kind of transitioning probably to maybe having a different membership, but right now, at least, you know, have sort of adjunct members, if
Right,
you
like a
will.
working group.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we did talk about doing that this year, and then as we go through the process this year, perhaps evaluating the existing bylaw and perhaps recommending some changes to the town bylaw around capital planning.
Okay, and you've seen this work successfully in other communities?
I have, yeah. I've worked with a number of communities that have different compositions. Still has citizens on the committee, but some of the major stakeholders do have a seat at the table. It may be the superintendent of schools or the, you know, town administrator,
Yep.
that sort of thing. But,
Okay,
and I think it's helpful with all the departments to understand what all of the needs are and weigh in on our overall priorities.
yeah, I
So-
do, I think we're all in it together.
Yes.
And we kind of have to
Right.
look at it that way, even though we kind of get into our own little swim lane, so.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did anybody have any questions for Todd?
While he's up there,
Yeah.
maybe we can discuss the facilities department in light of the information we have from the school. That may be something we may have to put on hold a bit.
Yeah, so thoughts on the facilities department of that little cobbled together cohesive kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think we need to look at, consider consolidating all of our facilities efforts under one sort of facilities umbrella, again, to prioritize townwide. We do have some funds in various departmental budgets that could be sort of pulled and put into a consolidated department, perhaps in 2021. We had, you know, talked internally about the need to have perhaps a manager, a facility director of some kind. We're just not sure with the recent news around education funding whether we might need to just defer that for a bit till we have a more clear picture on what we'll be able to afford. But the idea would be to have someone responsible for all major repairs and ongoing maintenance to our town facilities, someone who's expert in that area, not, you know, having the police chief and the fire chief
Right.
and the library director,
Yeah.
you know, knee-deep in building maintenance. That's not really their forte.
No, and it isn't, the scales of economy really
Right.
work much better if we can
Exactly.
try to consolidate a little,
Right,
so,
right.
yeah.
So we could bid things jointly townwide, perhaps even do some things with the schools in that manner to get some economy for the town. So it is something we want to, I think, continue to look at, but I think from a cost standpoint, we just may need to take a step back till the education funding
I would
sorts
like to
out.
see if we can push the envelope a bit on that, because
Sure.
this discussion has been going on forever.
Sure.
And while that's happening, our buildings continue to deteriorate because we're not attending to them.
Right.
And they never get cheaper to
Right.
fix,
Right.
right? It just always gets more expensive, so
Right.
it's sort of, you know, that kind of, where's the, you know, where is the line? Where's the line in the sand?
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys can, if you can sharpen your pencil a little.
Sure.
And see if we can, you know,
Sure.
see how we can try to make that happen sooner rather than later. I think we're kind of in agreement that it's something we'd like to have happen, so, yeah.
Okay, understood.
All right, great. We
Sure.
really appreciate the update, as usual.
My
Ex-
pleasure.
Excellent update, Todd,
Actually,
thank you.
I have two
Oh,
quick questions.
all right.
Sure.
I mean, I know that you just covered recreation and
It
the
was very
transfer
quick, though, yeah.
station
Yes,
really
sir.
quickly, but have you been working with those, well, I know Health doesn't have a department head, but have you been working with those two departments going into the new budgeting process?
I've
And-
been working with Recreation closely with Bill, the new director, and that's been, I think, really helpful for him as well as just to, you know, sort of pull things together. So I think we've sorted out how we want to approach the fall town meeting and sort of right the ship for them for this fiscal year. You know, we still have challenges going forward. With respect to solid waste, I haven't had much direct involvement.
Well, can you articulate to us
Sure.
how you're going to right the ship for recreation? Or
Well, when I
hope to-
say
yeah.
that, we, if you recall, both of these departments were not fully funded
Yes.
for FY '20.
Yeah.
So, round numbers, about 90,000 was taken off each, 180. And those funds were not parked in a drawer, they were, what we needed to fulfill our assessment for the
Right.
regional school. So that money's not necessarily on the table to fix the problem. So we're looking at their existing equity, we're looking at what they really need to get through the year. I know the Finance Committee has had some thoughts about perhaps folding them back into the general fund operating budget, and any revenues might be general fund local receipts, and the difference would effectively, come from the taxpayers, but they would be like all the other departments in terms of going through a prioritization.
But that's not really the path that we're on right now, right, with recreation?
For October, I think we're just trying to get funds to get them through the year, to figure out what they absolutely need. And with solid waste, we're more challenged because the contracts are up and we know the cost of disposal is not going in a favorable direction. So our expenses will likely increase and be more than what the Board of Health originally asked for. That, I think, is a little more challenging for us this
Hopefully,
year.
Arlene, we can very quickly touch on that when we talk about your warrant articles. I'm hoping, just because I want to stick with what's posted in the agenda. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. Okay, well, we thank you.
Oh, sure. Was
Did
there
that
something
answer
else,
your
Matt?
questions, Matt?
Yeah, no, that's what I was looking for. Is just,
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we're kind of addressing these situations moving forward.
Yep.
And that everyone's working together to make it right.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Okay.
And
Hayes.
I believe, I'm sorry to report Chief Mix, but I believe that I did see the gentleman from FXM Consulting, so we're going to jump right back on that. Welcome.
Thank you.
And if you would introduce yourself and briefly come up, and I know you've got about a 5 to 10 minute overview that you're going to give us of your findings. And just to refresh everybody's memory, this is a study that was funded by town meeting to work on an economic development plan
doing?
for Hanson.
You want me to hand these out?
Actually, I already gave them to him.
Oh, it's
You- you-
better.
you-
It's pretty.
Well, yours is, oh, if you want to give him the color one, you go right ahead. You went to the trouble of printing it.
As long as you're not going to charge us extra for the color.
Charge for everything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So Frank, I don't know if you want to step up to the podium, feel free.
Whatever suits you. As you may recall, I'm Frank Mahady, principal of FXM Associates, and we were contracted to produce an economic development plan with a grant you had from the state. When I last appeared before you here, and from the outset of the study, it was clear that your priority was to see what could happen in the vicinity of the South Hanson MBTA station.
Yes.
And which I think was very smart orientation on your part. We've done a look at market support generally, town-wide, for office space, for industrial wholesale space, for retail space, and for rental housing, all of which conceivably could be components of a mixed-use development at the South Hanson MBTA station, except potentially for industrial warehouse space. Although I might add, as you'll see, it's a very strong market, and you've done surprisingly well in that sector. You think, being as remote as you are from major transportation, that manufacturing and wholesale wouldn't necessarily prosper here, but it has, as it has in the whole region, as it has in the whole country. The greatest demand for commercial space has been so-called industrial wholesale space because of the proliferation of e-commerce and the need to establish distribution centers on a broader basis. So what you have in front of you, which Mary asked me to prepare a 2-page handout that we could get through in 10 minutes on your agenda. Our objectives were to assess market trends that could affect economic development with a target of the MBTA station area, our sources and methods, public and private secondary source data, selected interviews, real estate market data from CoStar, which is the preeminent source of the real estate industry. We have a commercial space demand model and a housing demand model that we use all the time. We've developed over a number of years that help us project demand for space. And we also had Judy Barrett, who recently prepared your housing production plan, is familiar with zoning in town, look at zoning in the vicinity of the train station. And that's a separate analysis. That really wasn't in our scope, but as we got into it, it was obvious that that was a very important consideration. So let me just go through real quickly, hit the high points. Your population and households increased between 2010 and 2019 and projected a continued increase at actually a slightly higher rate than they did in that period. And your growth rates in both population and households have exceeded the county and statewide averages. Obviously, Hanson's a desirable place to live, and people are expressing that by growing here. Your median household incomes are substantially higher at $106,000 compared to the Plymouth County at $79,000 and the state overall at $81,000. You have a higher proportion of residents in owner-occupied single-family homes than in either Plymouth County or the state. Your median home values are slightly lower than the county and the state. I'm not quite sure why that is. They're close. About a third of your residents hold bachelor's degree or higher, which is a lower proportion than in Plymouth County and in Massachusetts overall. And you might wonder, with lower rates of education, how come you have higher incomes? One explanation is you have more workers per household, which it was a surprising thing that jumped out at me. I rarely see that than either the county or the statewide average. So you have very industrious people in this town, working multiple jobs probably. Between 2007 and 2017, jobs actually decreased in Hanson, while they were growing at 14 to 15% in the county and the state. But since 2011, when the jobs that are here bottomed out, you've gained at a pretty good rate, so you're on the rebound. And the greatest gains were in the sector that is most promising generator of demand for office space, and the one that's growing nationally and as well as locally. You have very little office space. It's not in great shape. There's no vacancies. But that doesn't mean you don't have a potential to develop office space, particularly in the vicinity of that train station. So looking at the market conditions and trends, using a combination of employment growth and real estate absorption, we projected that your demand for office space in Hanson and the surrounding towns is about 8,000 square feet per year over the next 3 years. Average gross rents at $20 a square foot per year are pretty good, and they're enough to support rehab and even perhaps new construction. This is the average market rate now. This isn't the high end necessarily. That's a good, and the vacancy rate at 4.3% is low. It's lower than the state average for office space by quite a bit in Hanson and the surrounding towns. Industrial warehouse space, pretty good demand projected for that by both the real estate supply side and the employment side. 30,000 square feet per year, average gross rents, and low vacancy rates also suggest an opportunity to develop that kind of space. Retail restaurant space is projected at about 17,000 square feet per year demand over the next 3 years, each of the next 3 years. In Hanson and the surrounding towns, those gross rents of $17 a square foot per year are again favorable to support rehab, substantial rehab or new construction, and the vacancy rate of 2.7% is virtually nil. So if we look at the trends in employment, the trends in population, whatever, and the increased demand for retail space almost certainly means to satisfy it, you're going to need new construction, which is good from a tax base broadening standpoint. Over the next 5 years, demand for rental housing at prices that could support new construction is substantial in Hanson and surrounding. As you know, there's very little inventory of rental housing in this region. And we think that conservatively, very conservatively, you could capture at least 20 units a year of high-end market rate rental housing.
I was shocked at that. I really was, at the 2,700 per month, but
At least.
yeah, I mean, I believe you, it's just shocking.
Well, if you look at our model and how we do that, our housing demand model looks at, it's totally empirical, which is to say that we look at people who are moving each year by age and income, and from that we can derive what they can afford to pay for rent. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to pay that much if you don't have the right product in the right location and the right amenities, but the potential is definitely there. And the last point on the sort of market overview is that your tax rates are competitive. They're neither up nor down compared to the surrounding communities, but you do have a low percentage of your overall property taxes captured by commercial property compared to surrounding towns. And this is something to aspire to increase, obviously. We think there's a strong potential from a market standpoint for mixed-use office, retail, restaurant, and residential development in the vicinity of the MBTA station. There's a retail gap right now that's again, this is all empirical data. We didn't make this stuff up. But it's there. The demand is there. One of the things that we had hoped to achieve in this study, we can't solve and the second part, of course, is you really need to change the zoning to allow a higher density of uses and flexibility to deal with your wastewater treatment issue. And if you don't do that, nothing's going to happen.
It comes up time and time again.
It's been coming up for years and years. But it has to be done if you're going to realize that potential. What we thought we could do, even though we're not going to solve the zoning... That's okay. I've been interrupted in worse ways. What we thought we could do, without naming any names or getting into any individual specifics, is convince the property owners in the vicinity that there was a market potential that they may not realize as an incentive to consolidate that property and consider higher and better uses. So if this study accomplishes nothing else, it puts in their view, as well as in the view of other prospective investors, develop a very favorable market.
It substantiates it. Mary and Bob Curran and Deb Petty, our planner, and I last week had the opportunity to tour quite a large property on Main Street. And we were thrilled to see the progress that this gentleman has made, although it's not apparent from the outside of the building that any progress is made. He's made tremendous amount of progress inside. And similar to what some of your recommendations are, some of the things he's planning on are, he's primarily focusing on retail, but we're hearing on the other end of his building that we've got developers interested in putting in housing. So I think we're going to end up moving that needle on that mixed use. It may not be all in one building, but, one group of buildings may be housing and then the next may be retail.
The advantages of the mixed use are severalfold. One is every major developer is looking to do mixed use. Mm-hmm. And they're looking to do it because it's a lifestyle choice of people who are going to rent housing and hope to walk to stores and hope to walk to their job. We think that on the office market thing, we talked about this early on, came up again, and we did some additional research. But, there's co-working space opportunities in every suburban community now where people want to cut down their commutes to Boston. Yeah. And if you can make enough space available to them there are favorable numbers for developers that get to rent the same space several times over. I mean, the numbers work for office space. You want retail because retail draws people. But the core, highest and best use development is the residential. It's the rental housing. And no one should be afraid of rental housing targeted to young professionals and empty nesters, which is what everybody is doing right now. And it's part of your economic development strategy. If you couple it with some of the housing production goals you have to leverage additional financing to make the projects more feasible and attractive to investors, that will help make things happen. But density is the key, and you need to amend zoning to get to the density you need to in each of these uses.
Did any of you
Okay.
guys have any questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know at the beginning of when you first came in for your initial consultation, you mentioned that you were going to speak with all the members of Board of Selectmen, and
I didn't do that.
all right, and
My apologies.
why wasn't that done?
Oversight.
Okay.
We did do a dozen interviews with people, businesses in the town, and if you would like to follow this up with a discussion, if there's any amendments that you want to make to this draft final report, I'll be happy to do that.
I think we'd want to know the data that was used and who he spoke with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We can tell you who we spoke with, but we promise confidentiality in those interviews, so we can't tell you what they said except in the
That's fine.
aggregate, okay?
And then I
But we can tell you
suppose-
the sample of people we spoke to, sure, we'll send you the list of those people, Mary.
And then my next question would be, we talked a lot about what the private sector can do.
Right.
And we briefly just touch upon what the municipality can do. And I think that's kind of what we were hoping for, was more of what can the municipality do to stimulate this economic development?
Change zoning.
And is there anything else other than changing?
Well, you
zoning?
gotta work on the wastewater treatment issue, and that may require, a public investment as well. Deb is on top of that.
Oh, Deb is on top of it, and she's also looking at, because we've designated that an economic, target area.
Right.
She's also looking at what grants might be
That's right.
available, if there's 0% loans that we
That's
might
right.
be able to facilitate having somebody get, that type of thing. So she's very
Yeah,
invested.
I've talked with her,
Yeah.
and she, absolutely. So to answer your question on the public sector, I think you're moving in that direction as to feasibly what you can do at this point. But, wastewater is a big issue there.
It's also expensive. That's
It's very
been the,
expensive. Yeah, and that's why you need to amend the zoning to allow a higher density of development, because you've got to find a way to cover those extraordinary costs. And that's where the two come together, the zoning and the wastewater treatment.
Anything else on that, Matt?
Nope, that's all I have.
Anything else, guys? Kenny? Mary?
Okay.
Okay, well, we thank you very much,
Thank
Frank. And
you.
we will be in touch. If you could circle back and get that info to Mary, that would be amazing.
We'll be happy to do that.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And my
All right.
apologies for not calling you.
We are going to, Chief Mix, do you mind if we discuss the town warrant and just keep you, okay, great.
Yes, thank you very much.
So you've all got the town warrant in your hands, and I believe one of the first articles is the Board of Health. And Mary, how do we want to approach this discussion?
We can just start by, right from the beginning, I can go over these quickly. The board can vote to place and recommend if they wish, or just to place. The first one is unpaid bills. It's a regular article we have before every a special town meeting. We've got some bills from a couple of different departments. I still have a request out there. We could still get some unpaid bills. So right now, the unpaid bills are $6,665.
Motion to place Article 1.
Second.
All in favor? And I don't think we can recommend until we have the final.
Get a little bit
numbers,
closer,
so-
right.
Yep.
Number 2 is the supplemental budget. And Todd and I are still working on that. We have several items, transfers from additions to some of the current budget lines. We'll have a better handle on that next time we meet, so I can go over some of those things with you next time. So, but we do need it, so it's just a place.
Motion to place Article 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, the amendments to the recreation budget. This is they were only funded through half the year. So I have on there what they were currently budgeted for salaries and expenses. Todd, we need to wait on that, right? Yeah. I think we need to wait on that.
Even
Let
place and
Arlene speak on,
Okay, but
What's your place?
my understanding is FinCom is meeting with Recreation. Todd, you're in conversations. We've got all of the players talking and trying to work towards a common solution there. Okay, that is amazing. And Article 4, Ms.
we're gonna
Diaz.
place that, we're gonna place recreation.
Oh, fine, yeah,
Placing it,
yeah, sorry. Anybody want?
Motion to place Article 3.
Second.
All in favor? Ms. Diaz, I think Todd really wasn't able to update us on what was going on with the transfer station. Do you want to kind of cue that up for us? Tell us where you're at?
Well, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago just for the transfer station and FinCom, and I think it was the week that Todd wasn't here on Tuesday, but here on Wednesday, and I wasn't able to meet with him. So I got information from him as to what we spent the previous year and where we're at now. But I still need to meet with him to figure out what we need to do to close the gap.
Okay, and are you...
So it's just, we definitely want to move forward with this, we just have to figure out the numbers.
So just one of the things you're exploring is potentially hours changes? and-
Reducing, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and,
Actually, yeah.
okay. I didn't know if you might want to expand on how you're gonna look
Well,
at that.
right now, we looked at what the savings would be if we closed 1 day or 2 days a week. And then any other ways that we can reduce the costs. We had the sticker fees this year that brought in some.
Yeah.
But the salaries, based on what we got, would have to be cut in half.
Okay, so the ball's in play,
Yes,
probably gonna have a cut in hours.
absolutely.
And you're gonna talk to these guys and finish it up and bring it
Yes.
over the line. Okay, so I will.
Motion to place Article 4.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you, Arlene. Article 5.
This is a
Mary, this is
carryover
the-
article
yeah,
that I just-
You explained this to us before, but does everybody remember this one where?
Yeah, this is property that was conveyed, was supposed to be
Yes,
conveyed years
good
ago and it
point.
wasn't, so we need to get that. I just need to get some updated numbers, and Kate was looking for additional information on that. I have to track down where it was left off by Mike, but we need that
Motion to
on.
place Article 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay. Next, 6 is a patient loading system for the fire department that will be coming from ambulance receipts.
Motion to place Article 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay. Now, the number I have there is 70,000. You want to wait till we get a better number
Yes,
from them?
that's
Okay.
why I didn't ask.
All right. Zoning map books. This is presented by the town planner. I think it was the last October town meeting, we put in $3,500 to get the layer on people's GIS. But we don't have the books, and they're working off of old map books. So the cost to get the map books together and get the mapping people together is more substantial than we thought. So she's put in 25,000, but she's working on that number to see who we can get to where we need to be and get that done.
So is that a solid number?
I think she's still working on it. We can place it, and we'll get a better number as she
Entertain
continues
a
to work on
motion.
that.
Place Article 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Article 8 is, again, from the town planner. It's to codify the zoning bylaws. Deb may actually be able to do this on her own. We recodified them probably 5 years ago. And there have been, some of the numbers were not in the right place, and it's thrown everything off. And it's one of those, it's a big project to sit down and look at the old ones and make sure we get the numbers lined up. After Deb got some additional information from the former town planner, she feels she may be able to do it, but, spending her time doing that, it may be better for us to have somebody come in and just do it and get it done.
Where'd the 5K come from? Was that a spitball number, or?
I think it may be, yeah.
Okay.
Motion to place Article 8.
Second.
All in favor? And then if you can just circle back with us, and once you get a firmer number, if she decides whether she's gonna pursue it on her own.
And 9 is again from the town planner, and she was looking for a conceptual plan for Main Street. In order to get grants for that area, she would be better served to have some type of plan of what it is that we're looking for. So she's come up with a number of 15,000, have an engineering company put something together. She did find out from our walkthrough last week that the property owner actually had a similar plan written several years ago.
Just for
Just for his
property,
building,
yeah.
but so this number may be reduced if we say, well, we'll want to work off this plan and we're looking for something a little bit closer to the train station or closer to High Street on either side of the street. So it's a place to start, but
So is that a firm number, notwithstanding what you just said about the additional rendering that might reduce the cost?
I think
or-
the 15's, I think it would be reduced if she could use the
Okay.
other plans, but at 15, I think is probably a good number if we had to do it all out on our own.
Okay, so I'll entertain,
Motion to place and
Well, I was
recommend
gonna
Article
say
9?
This thing that we just spent the last 10 minutes,
No,
has got
that-
nothing to do with this article.
well, no, it does have something to do with it. It's the same area. And that is something that will be helpful that Deb probably could use in a package to look for a grant with the state. But this is a physical rendering, like a drawing of, hey,
engineered plan.
here's what retail will look like,
they're looking
you know, along that area, that type of thing. So conceptually, somebody might have a better idea of what it would look like.
But it's
if they
not,
wanted
it's not
to.
an engineered plan. Nobody's
No,
going out there
it's
and
not
measuring. They're
engineered.
gonna draw a
$15,000 for a
picture of
drawing?
buildings, a building.
Yes.
This will be commercial, and up above, there will be a little apartments, and then there'll be a
Yes.
sidewalk, and they'll show little people walking on the sidewalk. Just what we have envisioned for the area, that's what the conceptual plan will show, and then she'll be able to move forward
Yeah.
with.
I mean, we have asked Deb to work on it. This is what she's come back and said she needs in order to apply for grants. So, you know, okay.
And we may have money in some other articles that haven't been used over the last few years that we may be able to supplement this instead of it coming out of free cash.
That would, of course, be lovely.
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
To place and recommend.
Place and recommend, I guess, because you feel like that's a firm amount, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, Article 10 is from the Highway Department, and this is for removal of street sweepings. This is a one-time cost to get some of the street sweepings from the highway bond facility. And going forward, they will budget within their budget for the removals on an annual basis. So Article 10 is. for
Motion
street-
to place and recommend Article 10.
Second.
Just a question, I mean, how many years' worth of street sweepings are we talking about? I'm just curious.
Does he say in the article?
No, no, I didn't see any specificity around that.
I'm gonna say 5, does that sound right?
I was gonna guess 4, but he
Yeah.
did say on an ongoing basis, he thought they would need about 5,000 a year to stay up with it.
Okay.
This used to, as you recall, I think it used to be stockpiled at the
Plymouth County
Oh, I do
Hospital property.
recall, yes, I do recall that.
Yeah.
And so does Mr.
Don
so
Don
does Don
Howard.
Howard, yes. Don, yeah.
Todd, wouldn't it be, I don't know, I mean, it's the same price, but isn't it better to get rid of it every year at $5,000 than to go
Yes.
every?
This-
That's what we're gonna do going forward.
Yes,
Okay.
it will be part of the budget going
Okay, so I've
forward,
got
but
a
this is just to
motion-
get rid of it from now, yes.
To, I've got a motion
Place and
to
recommend.
place and approve,
Mhm.
and a second, so all in favor? Okay,
All right, and the next one's $12,000, and that's for testing and removal of catch basin cleanings. And again, this is to remove what we have on site right now, and going forward, he will budget accordingly to have it done on an annual basis.
A motion to place and recommend Article 11.
Second.
all in favor?
12 is from the library, and that's to remove and replace trees. These are the trees along the walkway in front of the building. There are 8 trees? 7?
There were 9, there are 7 left to be removed and replaced. They're a hazard. We've had, kids climb on them, they're like branches are coming off.
You mean the ones right along, they used to be so
Right.
lovely, but what, have they just grown too big and they just?
Yeah,
kinda-
they're not, well, probably years ago they weren't really
Yeah.
pruned on a regular basis, but, there's one there that I can just go over and push right over myself.
Oh, boy,
So
okay.
it's a danger.
That sounds like a liability, yeah. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to place and recommend Article 12.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, Water Department, this is to fund the union contract that will be coming out of water expense.
Motion to place and recommend Article 13.
Second.
All in favor?
14 is water, electric sign and signage at the building. That's for 40,000, will be coming out of water surplus.
Motion to place and recommend Article 14.
Second.
All in favor?
15 is a security system at the Crystal Springs well site for 25,000 out of water surplus.
Motion to place and recommend Article 15.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, what did I do?
Yes, flip it around.
All right. Well, apparently I had an extra page in there, didn't I?
Yeah.
16.
Flip it over and use the other side.
Yeah.
16 is the one that we've discussed. It's the piece of property. It's coming, it's, CPC is proposing it, and it's the sleeper property that's in back of Smitty's Bog, AKA Edgewood Bogs, next to Camp Kawani. And this is an article, and the explanation will ultimately say this, where they're going to, they've already applied to the state for the majority of the funding, and a very small portion will come from CPC. I don't know what the breakdown is here.
Is the money right?
Pardon?
Is the money right?
Yes.
The money's right, yeah. I'm sorry, 98 is from CPC, and the remainder of the cost of the property will be from the state. If we do not get the state grant, then of course we're not going to do the CPC funding. So the funding of this article is contingent upon us finding out. But unfortunately, we don't find out about the state grant. It's called the land grant, LAND. They're very creative in naming it. And that is January 1st-ish or so, we will find out.
So a motion to place and recommend Article 16.
Second.
All in favor?
Article 17 is for recreation. It's part of the fiber project we had discussed a couple of weeks ago that's going to be town-wide. They have money already appropriated in that, about $23,000 or $25,000. This additional $15,000 will supplement that article, and that will pay for their portion of the
There's no
connect.
dollar amount, is yours?
No, I know, I'm sorry, that's my bad.
All right,
That's-
so-
That was probably the page I
Recap
screwed
that
up.
dollar amount?
It's 15,000, and
Okay.
it'll come
All
from
right, so
retained earnings.
a motion to place Article 17. We'll wait, and should we
We will-
recommend it when the money's actually on the
Yeah,
page?
let's wait till it's printed in the.
Okay.
Yeah. I just think that's out of an abundance of caution. So I've got a motion, Matt, to do,
Place Article
Yeah,
17.
second.
okay. All in favor?
Article 18 is for improvements and repairs at Camp Kawani, which include replacement of the stove, fixing the roof, what else was in there? HVAC, and landscaping. And he didn't give you, did he give you any numbers, Todd?
I don't
when we
have
met
a number
today?
on this one either.
No, we worked on it together today. He should have something by the end of the week.
Okay.
Motion to place Article 18.
If I could just
I'm
say,
sorry, Todd, go
excuse
ahead.
me, Sir, on Article 18 and the following 19, in both cases, we will not be able to fund from recreation.
I was just gonna
retained
ask you
earnings.
that, okay. So what's the
This would
source?
likely be a recommendation to come from free cash.
Okay.
What did we say the dollar amount on 18 is
Yeah,
again?
can you recap that again?
We don't know what the number is for
Oh, do
18.
we have
They're
a
still working
ballpark?
on
Are
it.
we talking 200,
I'll
15,000?
tell you, my back of the envelope, 45,000.
Okay.
But Bill was gonna do some more work on it. It may be
So same with 19, we don't have a number yet?
19, he's thinking 15 to 20, but
And
he's.
didn't we already fund the trees to come down up
Along
at
the
Camp?
That's along the roadway. This is around the lodge.
Okay, well, all right.
To go into that too, I know we kind of spoke about this too. It sounds like the tree warden would like to just clear cut the driveway. And some of those trees are perfectly fine.
Right.
And there's a lot of opposition coming from the constituency saying, why are we clear cutting when they're perfectly good? And I think if we can help save some money, especially up at the camp, and instead of cutting the one good tree on the road, cut down one bad tree up near the lodge. I think that might be a little bit wise, other than just doing a
So,
clear cut.
Well, the money that we appropriated was strictly for the roadway, though.
Okay.
And then we only gave them half of what they thought it would cost to cut all the trees along the roadway. So they'll be taking some of the trees down. with the 25, I think it was 25,000.
Okay, but to build on what, I hear what you're saying, that article appropriated, but obviously to the extent we don't spend it, then there's money that we're saving that could be spent towards what Matt's saying. I was quite concerned when I drove along that road to see the numbers of trees that were marked, and I'm absolutely not an arborist. I wouldn't pretend to be one. But a lot of those are old, beautiful trees, and it frankly breaks my heart to think that they're all going to be taken down. And I just am wondering, have we had an arborist take a look at the health of the trees and whether they can be brought back or whether they might be able to be saved? I've heard anecdotally that this might be part of a larger plan to potentially improve the access to Camp Kiwanee, although nobody has formally said that to me. I've just sort of anecdotally heard it. Yeah, of course it doesn't have anything to do with this warrant, but since you brought it up, I just thought I'd chime in.
And you're the chairman.
So where are we on 18 and 19? We've got 45K potentially for 18, which is a back of the envelope, and then let's take that one. Where do we want to?
Well, 18 we put onto just place.
Okay. And
So-
19
is the
we're
tree
looking at
removal.
We
15 to
didn't, we didn't do
20.
18 yet, did we?
Yeah, I thought we had already done that.
Oh, okay. I didn't think we did that.
19.
I didn't
then?
check it off yet.
I didn't either, but.
All right, so maybe.
No,
All right, so how about we do this? How
I thought somebody had
about
moved it.
a motion to place Article 18 and 19 for recreation?
Okay. Second, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
We obviously need more information on those two.
Yeah, and maybe we can have Dave come and talk to us about the plan, Dave and Billy together to talk about what the plan is.
Okay.
Article 20?
Now, this is our article. Matt had requested this article placed. It's a grant, Mass Tree Grant. If we get the grant, our share would be 10,000, but it'll be a total of 20,000 for tree removal and replacement. Right?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
A motion to place and recommend Article 20.
Second.
All in favor?
Can I, yeah, I can
Yes,
vote on
you
this,
can
right?
vote. You could, in fact, you could have seconded it. That's not a conflict.
He was looking at me.
But, we got to keep Jim busy occasionally over there. All right, Article 21.
This is a regular article we have on each year, 21 and 22. I threw in 50,000. The 50,000 all depends on what we actually have available by the time we're done with town meeting. 50 for stabilization.
So that's the most it'll be. It could be less.
I mean, if we did really well, it could be more.
Could be more.
So we'll have a better idea. I mean, we can just place it until we have a better idea what the amounts are.
Okay.
And same with the school stabilization. Right now, we have 82 or 83,000 set aside for the roadway into the high school. We approved that, but Whitman did not. So that's sitting there in an article. We can leave that there, but if they decide not to, fund it whenever they decide, whatever they're gonna do, we could always put that 82 into the school stabilization.
Right,
but-
Motion to place Article 21 and 22.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, 23.
23, this is FinCom's article to revoke the transfer station enterprise fund.
Motion to place and recommend Article 23.
I don't know, I want to discuss this a bit.
We can just place it.
No, at the last town meeting, I really felt that we had a misstep in allowing a department, other than the department, to propose articles relating to the department. And I'm concerned about the precedents that this sets. And I understand that FinCom is a recommending body, but I'm not sure about them submitting an article on behalf of the Board of Health. I think it's like I said, a dangerous precedence. We've got an elected board who's been elected to run that Board of Health, and I think that there might be a better way for this issue to be solved, and I don't know. Talk to me. Am I out here on the limb by myself?
Well, I think, I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with you, Laura, but they don't have a department head. They only have one paid employee. Those elected officials, same as us, as we were elected to these positions, are not being paid. They're volunteer.
That's right.
The finance committee, Kevin has his hand up. The Finance Committee is flipping the bill, or not flipping the bill, but their recommendations on how that should be run. So,
So can,
oh,
if I
Yes,
can- I'm sorry.
Mr. Sullivan.
So this really is just merely an accounting shift. This doesn't change anyone's stance. This doesn't shift how the Board of Health operates the transfer station. It doesn't change anything really, other than the accounting method by which all the revenue is accrued. Because the purpose of the enterprise funds is for a self-sustaining enterprise. So that's why it works well for water. We're looking, and with our meeting with the Board of Health, and I think Laura, you were at it, we've hit a point where the transfer station is never going to be a profitable enterprise. It's never going to turn a profit like the water department does. I say profit from an accounting standpoint. It's never going to turn a profit. It's not going to change it's just going to change the manner in which the funds return to the town. Instead of going to the fund and having to be transferred back to the town, or the deficit between what's in the enterprise fund and what we have to fund it, they're still going to put in their budget the amount that it costs to run the transfer station. It's just going to run more like the police station, the fire department, general government services. It will all fall under the same bucket of accounting. It's not a self-sustaining, which is what an enterprise fund is. And if we don't, this streamlines the process. We've talked briefly, and we have a conversation with the recreation department scheduled for Thursday. Our hope is that the recreation department has some plans there is a path to it being profitable.
I think they're working on a business.
Absolutely, and I think there's a real shot there, but I think everyone can agree that the transfer station, with all the numbers we've crunched ourselves independently from the town accountant, separately from the Board of Health, it's never going to be profitable. So every town meeting, we're always going to have to go and we're going to have to put another article in to fund the deficit between the enterprise fund and what they're actually requesting in the budget. It's not a referendum on the transfer station. It's just merely, it makes it easier from an accounting standpoint.
Okay, I appreciate your input. Mr. Hassett, thoughts on this? You have no thoughts?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I don't disagree with what Kevin said.
Do you support it, I guess is what I'm saying? Do you think that, as our accountant, because this is clearly, going to impact how we're accounting for things, do you think that this is something that we should be doing?
I guess my only concern would be holding the department, the Board of Health, accountable to continue to bring in a certain amount of revenue to offset a portion of the cost of the program. And I don't know if one method puts their feet to the fire more than another.
Okay.
But operationally, Kevin's right, it really doesn't matter. This is just accounting. It's not, really changing how we operate it necessarily.
One thought, I know when I went to the transfer meeting, the big debate was, well, if we throw this back into general taxation, everyone's paying for it. But for those who have curbside pickup, aren't necessarily paying for it with the enterprise fund. Right? Am I understanding that correct? Was that what? So I suppose, it's the big question is, do we, as the town of Hanson, want to fund the transfer station that a lot of our tax base may not use? So I think that's the big question.
I don't know if that's right. It's the money, it's just the money's coming in, it's just going into a different bucket.
Yeah.
Well, right now it's
Right.
just a bailout. But when the markets were profitable, when recycling was worth something before China said, no, we're not taking your crap anymore, it was self-sustaining at one point, correct, Todd?
Yes, correct.
I think what you're saying is more of a long-term philosophical question, which we've got to get to at some point, but we've got the interim, more short-term issue of the present accounting and what we're gonna do to kind of bring it more in line with what we've got for revenue.
Every town meeting, we have I'm sorry, Jim, we have a deficit, so we're going into taxation, so taxation's paying for it anyways.
And it's the free cat.
Regardless of what's there, the deficit is always covered by taxes.
Yes.
Whether I have curbside or not, I'm still paying for it once you
Yes.
raise the taxes
Yeah.
to make up the
Yeah.
difference that
Yeah.
they're not.
And
But I think what
just
Todd's saying is with the enterprise, you can hold them a little accountable because you can see what's coming in. Obviously, there's more going out than what's coming in, but at the end of the day, it's still accounting.
Ms. Diaz, we have not heard from you, and I very much would like to do that.
I would say that I wasn't in favor of this. It was brought to me, the finance committee. In terms of accounting, I've not sat down and talked with Todd about it. The amount of money that we get each year from taxation isn't a large amount, and I'm assuming everything after this, if we no longer have an enterprise fund, all comes from taxation. Am I correct?
No, it
No?
would still be
No,
the
it's still
same
the
net
Yeah.
impact to the taxpayers.
It's the
So we
exact
bring
same.
in revenue, it'd be like local receipts, just like a building permit or motor vehicle excise, and the net would be raised from property.
The only difference, we don't have to do that deficit transfer at town meeting like we've been
Correct.
doing.
Correct.
That's really, and that's
Same
just,
impact to the
yeah,
taxpayers.
that's really the only difference.
So, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll entertain a motion to place, and since there's not a dollar amount attached, we could also recommend. But what, is this incomplete?
It is,
What,
because there's no reason.
yeah, what's the because?
Right, just an explanation, right, is that what I'm looking for?
Was there something you guys were gonna fill in after the because there?
Mary just got it to us.
Oh, would she just throw a placeholder in
Yeah.
there?
The town lawyer put it in there.
Okay.
She worded it, put it in there, and then we'll have to complete.
Yeah, why don't we just,
Motion to place Article 23.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor? Okay, so, we just need the wording on that, but I assume it would be FinCom that would give the wording, or is Kate
Yeah, we can
giving
go
us
over the
wording?
explanation and see
Okay.
what they want to put in there.
All right, Article 24.
This is, they're gonna be, the capital improvement committee is gonna be revising the matrix. The matrix we accepted in May did not include the demolition of McQuon School, so if we get to that point and we're gonna do it, we need to borrow the funds, bond it, and it needs to be on the matrix, so they're just gonna add that.
Okay.
Quick question on that, which I think you brought up. How long is that money, that estimate for the $1 million good for, to take down the school?
We need to revisit that
Yes.
estimate.
I mean, is it like to the end of the year, does it have an expiration date, I guess is what I'm asking?
I
$1 million?
don't- I don't recall there being.
The estimate for the million,
No,
not the actual
estimate.
million.
I don't recall there being a deadline, but usually inherent in those things is like 6 months or
Yeah.
something.
We
'Cause
should probably check.
well, I had already asked Mary if
Right.
if we could kick the tires and refresh
See if we
that.
can get a different
yeah.
number, because the numbers that Deb had pulled from the report when they were talking about renovating McQuon School, the numbers for that demo was different than the numbers that
Yeah.
Mike had received.
Okay. So, motion to place Article 24. You
Second.
want to recommend it too?
You could recommend
Okay.
that as well. Yeah.
Sorry, so place and recommend Article 24. Sorry, man.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, all right, Article 25.
Article 25, yeah, this was something that I asked for. So right now, the moderator term is 1 year, so Sean has to pull out papers every year, and I thought we should extend it to 3 years, just so he's not.
And you
in
did
here.
check with Mr. Keeley on this.
I did not. I did not.
You didn't?
Yeah, recommend.
No, but I will do that.
Okay,
Somehow, I don't think he's gonna have a problem with it.
okay, so,
Although, Kevin left, but the chairman for FinCom said, Kenny, that's the only way we get him to town hall once a year. So you sure you want to change that?
ouch, that's hurtful.
So, but I think Sean will be, I'll reach out to Sean.
Okay, so do we want to just?
So why don't we just place that?
There you
It's
go.
a motion to place Article 25.
Okay. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Article 26 is for an easement at 62 Ocean Avenue. 62 Ocean Avenue is now tax title property, and one of the properties we'll be able to auction off. it has 2 septic systems on it. Several years ago, when the property owner had owned the property at 62, he also owned the property at 51. And he didn't have enough room at 51 to replace the septic system, so he put the septic system on at 62.
Both of which he owned at the time.
Yeah, both of which he owned. And at the time, the Board of Health told him he needed to give himself an easement, in case something goes south, which of course it did. And the bank took 51. So now the septic system is owned by 62, and 51 is owned by the bank. So, there's no easement. Now that it's our problem, we need to get place an easement on the property before we turn around and sell it. So I've run it by council. They thought, for some reason, he was under the impression that it would be valued over $35,000. And I said, it's a 30-foot wide easement with a septic system on it, so he doesn't think there needs to be any type of bid process or anything.
I was going to ask you what kind of a dollar amount we're looking at here.
Really, no dollar amount, other than I gave him an as-built septic plan with all the meets and bounds around it. That's what I've actually used inside the article of what it's described as. Jay thought that maybe we should just see if the owner of 51 will pay for the engineering costs to actually do a regular plan that we can record an easement on, and move from there. But it's up to the board what they want to do. If they want to charge him for the septic system, it's something that should have been resolved before it became our problem. But we want to take care of this before we sell it at tax title.
Well, yeah. So this is really empowering us to take whatever action we need to get the easement moving.
Yes.
So that's why there's no dollar amount attached to that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
That was just a place to recommend.
Place and recommend.
Place to
Yeah.
recommend, yeah.
Sorry, I let you
All
down
right,
that one.
Article 27.
27 is an amendment to the wage and personnel bylaw, which we just talked about at the wage and personnel meeting we had, because we have members who were in, department heads who were in the matrix listed as professional positions. They have subsequently now received a contract. So contracted people should be exempt under section C and D of section 1 of the bylaw. So this just moves them into that section saying they're exempt, and then the next article will have them removed from the matrix.
So this is what we just discussed
That's what we
in our
just
wage and
discussed.
personnel meeting.
Yes.
So a motion to place and recommend Article 27 and 28.
Second.
All in favor?
Can I ask one question?
Mm-hmm.
On the health agent,
Mm-hmm.
in 7119, the upper number should be not 60,000, but 70. Okay. All right.
And also, as we discussed in the wage and personnel meeting, we've made some changes. We made a change to the Director of Elder Affairs. We found that after doing a salary survey for the MMA, that some of the top ranges were short of what we're actually paying the staff, so we need to adjust those.
Excuse me, Mary, but we did not address this upper end of the health agent at 70,000 in our wage and personnel. So do we need to circle back on that?
No,
or-
that's wrong. This one,
Okay,
when
it's
I
just
I grabbed this from the wrong place, but we had already fixed that previously, so I'm using the wrong chart
Right, can
apparently.
you just tick and tie and make sure that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we would be changing, that's what happens when you cut and paste, is what that
Yes.
is.
Pitfall for the unwary.
So the planner would be 80,000, the top range, and we talked about the changing the lower range for the IT director, that should be 50, since he's being paid more than
Yeah.
50. So I'll make those changes into that chart.
Okay, so we already moved it to place it and
To
approve.
recommend.
Yeah, recommend. All right, Article 29 and 30. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm conflating them. Article 29.
29 is a marijuana licensure. We have rules and regulations with respect to marijuana establishments. Town council suggested we actually have a bylaw as well. It just kind of gives you a little more teeth into our rules and regulations. So this just outlines all the process for licensing for those establishments.
And fines and et cetera, if people
Yes.
violate. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, then we've got Article 30, to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Hanson general bylaws by adding Article 3-25 waste reduction. And this is the, AKA the plastic bag ban?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want to give any color commentary around that, or?
We're moving forward. On September 10th, at the next Board of Health meeting, we're going to finalize the language on it. And then I'm hopefully going to do one more outreach meeting before the town meeting, just to keep people informed. And then there's just some communities groups that also are doing outreach as well.
Do you want to recommend it, want to place and
Anything?
recommend it?
Yeah, I'll put
Okay, okay, I'll entertain a motion.
so moved.
Second.
And to recommend.
Okay. All in favor? Alrighty, and was that for Article 30 and 31?
31, I think we need to clean up a little.
Yeah, same situation. We have to just finalize the language at the next Board of Health meeting. But same idea.
It's the same
All
idea.
right, so do you want to just vote to place on that one, so
Sure.
you can tidy it up a bit?
Actually, could we go back and just place both of them?
Yeah,
Just because the language
Okay.
isn't finalized.
all right, so I'll,
I
Let's do
moved
a
to,
new motion on 30 and 31, just to place.
okay, all in favor?
I seconded that, Mary, didn't hear me?
Okay. All right, let's see, Article 32.
I think
This is an amendment to the zoning bylaw to limit the number of marijuana establishments in Hanson to 1. And it's a petition article, so it has to be placed.
Okay.
And Article 33 is a similar article, it's just for the general bylaws, again, limiting the number of establishments to 1 in the town of Hanson.
Now, Mary, was legal counsel looking at this as to format? Were we with that? I don't know.
I sent it to them as soon as I got it, and the response back to me was just, it's a zoning bylaw, and the planning board has to hold a hearing. So we leave it as, however they arrive, it goes in the warrant the way it's submitted.
Even
So
if
we
it's-
can't change it.
No, I know we can't
Yeah.
change it. I just didn't know if they had feedback.
No, no,
Okay.
but I will, once we're all set with the warrant, I'll send it to them again, and they will go through it and make,
What do you want to do?
give
Do
their
you want
commentary.
to place? I mean, typically,
have to-
typically
yeah, it
in
has
the
to
We don't,
past.
it's placed anyway.
Placed. It's
So-
an automatic.
And, you know, it's up to you guys whether you want to vote to recommend or not. I would
I've-
refer to town meeting personally,
Yeah,
but
ever since I've been on, I've never supported a citizen's petition, since I've been up there. But
you don't mean you haven't supported it, you just haven't recommended it one
Recommended
way or
it,
the other, yeah. Okay, so, thoughts on that? Do we want to, take a vote to refer to
Not rec-
town meeting?
Nothing, right, Mary? It's petition, so it's automatically in.
No,
It's
but,
automatically in, but now you
It's
can make
in,
a recommendation on
but
it. Do you
they
want to
still look
recommend it
for
or
a
refer it to town
recommendation
meeting
or
to make a
not. So we can
recommendation?
either say we don't recommend, we do recommend, or neutrally, we refer
I
to
would
town
recommend it.
meeting. What do you guys say?
What did you say?
I don't know, I feel like I've,
I'll make a motion to not recommend Article 32 and 33.
I don't know if we can do that, it's a
Yes, you
petition.
can.
No,
No,
you
you don't,
can-
no, you
it's
don't.
still
This
getting
Yeah.
This is just to recommend.
we're just saying we're not in.
If you're not in favor
you're
of
not
it,
in
you-
favor of it.
You can,
Okay,
Kenny, we have a motion on the floor not to recommend.
second.
any discussion amongst the board, and then I'll recognize you, Mr. McLeod.
Okay, that was for both articles, right?
Correct.
Mr. McLeod.
Mike McLeod, 27 Highland Terrace, I'd like to know, why the board would not recommend.
Well, we haven't voted, this is just 2 members, but certainly you
What
can-
is, okay, so
Yeah.
whether it be the minority or majority opinion, I'd like to know why.
I don't agree with the article, Mike.
Why?
You know, what if there was another establishment that wanted to come in town?
That's what we're saying. Limited to one.
I understand, that's why I disagree with it. That's only my opinion. Ultimately, it's gonna go to town meeting and the residents are gonna get the vote. But for me personally, I just disagree with it. That's just me personally, I'm only 20% of a vote. Well, 25 tonight.
Yeah, 25. The club just.
That's all, it's nothing personal.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so was it?
Motion
We've
and second.
been around the bend and back again here,
The
I've
mo-
lost track.
The motion
All right.
was not to recommend Article 32 and 33, and then Matt seconded it, so now we have to vote.
Okay, all in favor of not recommending?
Not, right.
Okay. I want to refer to town meeting, I'm not against it, I'm not for it.
Okay, so you're gonna abstain?
I'm abstaining, yep.
Okay.
Okay, so, does that wrap us up for the?
So we're on our way to October town meeting.
Well, actually, there was the school budget. Did we want to place something in the?
Oh, right.
Good for you.
So, Mary, yes, did you want to kind of articulate that a bit more?
Sure, I move to place an article in the town warrant for town meeting to revoke our agreement to the regional school district.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, all in favor?
So,
Pick up.
we will, I'll move that someplace else in the warrant.
Yeah,
Get the verbs
So
later.
what you have here is the proposed articles as of today.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you see this, it's gonna be in a different, I have it pretty close, they're all in pretty good order, but I will move that up in the process. I'm not gonna
Okay.
have it as the last article.
all right, great. So I will entertain a motion to close the warrant,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor? Okay, great. All right.
Chief Mix has weeds growing around him.
I know he does. Chief Mix has been exceedingly patient this evening, and we appreciate it.
Let's
So,
do appointments and resignations.
Chief, I don't know if you want to get up to the podium. I know that's your favorite place. And let us know where you're coming from.
You forgot the word briefly.
Good evening. Yeah, I will be brief, actually. So, I was in to give a little update as to what's going on with the police department as far as, the main thing that's going on is, you know, we're going over to Duxbury. So we'll be heading over to the regional Old Colony Center. So that's scheduled to happen July 1st. And in preparation of that, we've been reviewing how various departments have dealt with the transition, also how they've staffed after they've gone to a regional. After reviewing a number of different places and speaking to places that have both civilians and police officers, everybody's kind of leaning towards the police officers to staff the station so that when somebody comes in, we're not dark. Hanson's at a funny position in that stations south of us have gone dark. We did station counts and found out how many people were coming in. The station counts were fairly consistent with the first one we did. We do about 300 people a month walk into the station, which I thought was high until I reviewed the traffic data, that on a daily basis, just under 14,000 cars drive by that station. Traffic engineer had told me that on peak days, it's between probably 15 and 17,000 cars drive by there. That would explain to me a lot more of the walk-ins. The first time we did it was just how many people walked in the station. Then we said we're going to narrow it down. After we narrowed it down, we said, what are people coming in for? In that, about 50% of the time, people were coming in because they needed a police officer. When I've talked to other departments that have civilians greeting the public as they come in, any of the tasks that the civilians can handle for that person, I can teach a cop to do. But the other 50%, I can't have the civilian do. Dealing with restraining orders, taking in firearms or ammunition. Just walked in the station the other day, we had some, which is always a little disconcerting. It's nice if you call ahead if you're gonna bring firearms, and we kind of like that a little better. But the officers can do everything that citizen needs when they come in. It also adds a couple more layers to the department. And as far as public safety, one, it gives me a deeper pool of employees. So if I do have somebody go out long-term sick or get injured, I have more of a pool of sworn officers to pull from to continue to cover the road as well. Also, I can't send civilians into the cell block. I can write a policy when that officer can leave the communications center. They can go into the cell block to do 15 or half-hour checks, because currently if we have a prisoner in there, we go back every 15 minutes or every half hour, depending upon the status of the prisoner, and physically check them. I can't send civilians in to do that. And that allows me to keep the officers out on the road. The other thing, I ran some numbers, and I have to apologize, my numbers are, the accuracy of the numbers is only as good as what was put in the system. And when the system is a DOS-based 1994 computer system, which, don't get me wrong, is actually works very well. The problem is it's not very good for data mining. It works very well for the day-to-day operations. So data mining, trying to figure out why people are coming in, it's a little more difficult. When we ran the statistics in the call reasons, or the way that calls came into the station versus our station count, again, we found about 50%, about 1,500 out of 3,000 walk-ins were they needed an officer for something. Of that,
They're not just, like asking for an accident report
No,
or
and-
whatever.
and-
These are real, like.
yes, these aren't, it's not directions, it's not, I need to use the bathroom. Those all figure in. Some of those numbers of the walk-ins deal with, we have a number of different groups come use the training room for meetings, whether it's football, the retired teachers, we have blood drives there. All those things require somebody to be there. But going back to the reasons for the calls, one of the things I did pull out, and I know the fire department's going to have slightly different numbers in talking to them. Their numbers were actually, I think, higher. There about 15 a year that walk in that are medical issues. Again, I can take an officer, write a policy, and allow that first responder to come outside of the glass and start treating that person. Whereas a civilian, I can't. The best I can do with the civilians is teach them CPR. And we all know that somebody who needs CPR doesn't walk in. So what we're looking to do is to start this transition and I'll be working with Todd, is to start trying to hire some officers. Now, these aren't new positions, so to speak, because when we go to the Rock, when we go to Duxbury, we currently fund 5 civilian dispatchers full-time. As well as 1 day a week is a part-time position. I have to cover 168 hours all the time. So with those 5 leaving, I'm looking at eventually putting in 4 officers, and I'll supplement that other coverage with existing officers by rearranging some of the schedule and duties. But to do that, I can't just wait till July 1st of next year and put on an ad and try and hire. Hiring officers, especially if we have to train them, it's at least 6 months in the academy alone. I usually plan on a year to be able to bring somebody in, get them trained, and then field train them where they can go out in the street and work. Currently, I have 1 officer that's twice been pushed back. One of the current civilian dispatchers, if you remember, months ago, over 6 months ago, you voted to make Dave Munn one of our next officers. We weren't able to get a slot in the Plymouth Academy. That was around that time. And now that academy got pushed out to October. Now I just got word it's been pushed out to January. So there's a lot of things that are outside of our control in bringing in new officers. So he's set up. He'll be in. As it is, I'm not going to have him ready for July 1st. But we're looking to supplement, and that'll go into the budget later, and I'll work with Todd. We're looking to supplement this year's budget to try and bring in a couple more officers to offset that July period. And then in next fiscal year, I'll bring in 2 more. And that way we can fully staff the station 24/7, 365. And I can keep road coverage most days to what it is now.
So, Chief, I think, we've never formally voted as a board on this, but it's never been a notion for us to have a dark station, ever, ever, ever.
I agree.
I realize
That's never
that.
been on the table. And I think one of the things when we discussed this was the fact that it's relatively cost neutral in terms of, so we're gonna have much better service overall because we'll have a police officer at the desk. We'll
Yes.
have the state-of-the-art regional dispatch, and it's gonna be relatively cost neutral.
We'll be able to enhance services. And right now, the cost of hiring civilians versus bringing in those 4 officers and offsetting the money that we have with the current 5 civilians in the budget, it's within $15,000 about. So it's
Yeah.
basically cost neutral for
And I
us.
think one of the things we also discussed, which I think we had all discussed when we were talking about the regional contract, is there's a little caveat in that contract that says, hey, if everything goes down at the ROCC, you guys are on your own for dispatch. So we've always got to have that level of redundancy in our own station where we've got somebody who's able to do quasi-dispatch there.
Yes.
Because that's, it's contractual, we're required to do it, and obviously we can't be without any dispatch. So, so I think this, your thought process was this also helps towards that.
So one of the things, yes, you're correct. So not that I expect them to not be able to handle us, but let's face it, technology is what it is. If the 911 lines go down, if there's a major storm and they have an issue, all the other towns have to be prepared to take on their own dispatch. If you go back to that March storm 2 years ago, we, knock on wood, handled it fairly well, but what people don't realize is I had 3 civilians in the station, 3 civilian dispatchers, 2 handling 911 lines, 1 handling the business line, because people couldn't get through. And it wasn't just us, it was everywhere. And it was a struggle for Duxbury. I know, listening to the radio and having to deal with neighboring towns, and they're looking for help that we couldn't provide them. And I had nine officers on the road, just going from call to call. And the only reason I didn't have more is I didn't have any more cruisers to put on the road to physically get them anywhere. And we kept an officer in the station on top of those 3 civilians to try and take care of everything. There's gonna be those storms, and we're gonna have to deal with them. If I have civilians that, are dealing with, records requests and directions and simple things, I shouldn't say simple, it's important jobs, but things that an officer can also do, those civilians, I can't keep them trained up to be able to take over that dispatch console and move officers around, take care of the computer system, and do that. That's something that somebody has to do all the time to be proficient at. The officers do it every day because they're just in their cruiser. It's no different. If I put them in a console, they just got a different view, for lack of a better analogy. So again, we're starting to move forward with that. I'm hoping in the next probably week I can figure out some existing monies that we can kind of absorb and start going forward. Hopefully for January to have 2 officers lined up. And I will advertise for what we refer to as a lateral. In other words, it's a fully trained officer from another community. We call it poaching.
Yeah.
The other chiefs get a little uptight, but it's all part of the game, I guess. So we put word out there. Hopefully, if we can get somebody that's already trained, that could save me just $3,000 in tuition alone. Never mind, depending upon how long they've been out of the academy, their experience. It might just be a 3-month training period in-house to get them up and running, and that's a big saving. That's 6 months of salary plus the tuition. So we're going to start working on that. Do you have any questions on?
Any questions?
Do we need a vote here, Mary?
This
We need
isn't
to
a
vote?
money
No,
item,
this-
it's
no.
really
No.
just an update,
Right.
a date
No,
on
it will,
it.
whatever he's looking for, see,
gonna go
for
in
funding will
supplemental
be
budget.
an article
Supplement.
to the supplemental
Okay.
budget, so
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
vote.
This is more of an
Oh,
informative
sorry.
thing.
It's informative.
Thank you.
So not to take up much of your night though, but the facilities manager thing, I'd be thrilled. I got my new sidewalk, just so we know. I'll continue my update. I got my new sidewalk. It looks beautiful. I can't wait until it gets dirty and matches the rest of the sidewalk. And I'm going through my summer annual replace and repair all the HVAC systems. So
See, and that's something that just shouldn't even be on your plate.
I
so,
spend
you know.
that's why I was asking Todd what they were looking for HVAC, because I've got some expertise in it now, unfortunately.
So
All
we
right.
shouldn't send you to get your contractor's license?
No, I'm not that good. I just know what stuff costs.
Anybody have any other questions for Chief? Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, guys, we are up to Cultural Council, and we've got an appointment for Jennifer Cronin, 335 Winter Street, and I will entertain a motion.
Is she here?
I don't see Jennifer, no.
I don't.
Mr. Chair,
Do you
I
wanna
just
Did you have it? I know, oh, go ahead, Matt, you gotta ask it.
I just
Yeah.
want to check
Yep.
that we've gone through correct protocol, but whether it was,
And I have not met her. I called and left her a message to, that we're gonna be doing this, so we can table this until she can come in.
I actually know Jennifer.
Oh, you
She-
do?
I
Okay.
mean, I'm not like, I don't hang out with her, but I know her through Panther Education Trust and other fundraising things. She's pretty dedicated volunteer for the schools, very competent, very positive, very smart lady. But I don't know what, I don't know if we should still have Mary talk to her, or it's up to you guys.
The Cultural Council is in need of members. Actually, last week we appointed her mother, and Peg Westfield has been going out beating the bushes to get people to sign up, as a matter of fact. So,
Mr. Chair, I think maybe at the next meeting, we should really reconsider what we put in place only several months ago. For instances like this, are we going to say no to a volunteer, you have to come in and talk to Mary, or talk to one of us on the board, or be here? So I think we might want to revisit it.
Although well-intentioned, perhaps we've hamstrung ourselves, yeah. Okay, well, yeah, let's noodle that.
I agree with Matt, because
you
you get a volunteer, it is nice to have them come in, but if they don't come in, we shouldn't, kick them to the curb, especially where they're looking, so Matt's right, we
have to
should
have
probably
some
revisit
vetting,
that.
though. There has to be some, sensibility check,
Well,
I
obviously, we
guess.
want them to come
Yeah.
in front and
Well,
still
yeah.
talk to Mary, but if, in this case, if she can't, we don't want to say, no, sorry,
Well, I think at one point we were talking about Corey checks for all our volunteers.
We were.
And would that suffice for, a character check?
I don't know, you could pass the Corey and still not be a
Well,
particularly great
You might-
person.
you might
to
not-
work with.
But,
Hey.
that's what I'm just saying is, I think we're kind of putting up unnecessary barriers.
No, you're right. Well, I think we should take it under advisement, so maybe we can put that on the agenda, Mary.
but in the meantime,
to
we
talk
should,
about.
we should vote for her. You think so? Are you all right with that?
Well, I'm just very protocol-like, but no, I think if Laura can
I feel
speak on her
comfortable
behalf.
vouching for her. Her
Yeah.
daughter has been very active in drama. That's probably why she's interested in the Cultural Council. Music, that type of thing. So it makes sense to me knowing her the way that I do. And like I said, I'm not really, really close, but I just know her well enough to know that she's quite involved and quite capable.
So, yeah, I'll move to approve her application.
Second, to expire 6/30/21.
Okay, all in favor? All right.
now we skipped the fire department update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to do that for Jerry? Jerry was looking to increase the fire rates, the ambulance rates.
Didn't we just do that a year ago?
So he,
I don't think we did. We did
I
a few
did
years
the
ago.
ambulance.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what
the
she's
ambulance
talking
rates,
about.
that's what we're doing. Jerry, there's a bill in the legislature to,
Oh, yeah.
to set these, and Jerry wanted to bring the rates up a little bit more competitive with our neighbors, because the bill, I think, they'll say, if this is what your rate is, that's max,
Yes.
that's as far as you're going.
Yeah.
So he wants to get ahead of this before, if that bill passes. The bill may not pass, but if it does pass, he wants to be ready for it, and he gave us all the backup data with comparisons for the other communities, or where they're at with respect to the ambulance rates. So right now, our current rates for BLS is $1,200, and he's seeking $1,600 effective September 1st. ALS 1 is $1,600, he wants to increase it to $2,000. ALS 2 is $2,200, he wants to increase it to $3,000, and mileage is $25, and he wants to increase that to $33.
It's still potentially even lower than a lot of the
33
other-
cents or dollars?
$33, did I say cents?
No, you
Oh,
did.
$33.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Just
so
making sure.
I will entertain a motion.
Remind me not to ride one of Jerry's ambulances.
So moved.
Second.
You've got health insurance.
So that was-
Matt
that was
agrees.
Kenny and
Matt
Kenny,
wants to,
Jim and
Matt was
Kenny.
gonna
Well,
walk
can I
to the
just say the
hospital.
meeting is devolving?
Well-
It is devolving.
Wait, I wanna hear what Matt has to say.
One thing
Mr.
I
Dyer.
would like to say before we officially cast the vote is, I think one thing that we really need to consider, I know, but I just want to put this out on the record,
Okay,
is what I'm
yeah.
saying, is one thing that we really need to look at is services that we provide to the public. Right now, Americans can't come up with an extra $500, which is really crazy. Not a lot of families have savings. And I guess what I'm saying is, right now people are calling up Ubers to bring them to the hospital than rather call an ambulance. And I think that's just something that we just need to stay aware of as we move forward. And I understand health insurance, I understand we need to cover our costs so we can buy ambulances in the future, but I just wanted to go on the record of saying, we just want to monitor this as we go forward. I know we're
Are
not
you
above
proposing
rate.
not to do the increase?
Well, initially, but with the information that Mary just proposed, I don't want to get caught in being locked in and then having that bill pass, and then 10 years later,
I think
we're
we're
not.
grandfathered, like, we'll end up being grandfathered
Right.
at that rate, which, in the very, very near future, will probably not even be competitive, but will nevertheless be locked in, because the state is,
And something Jerry, and I'm not doing Jerry justice, having Jerry here is best. But he also explained to me that if our ambulance is out on a call and it's transporting a Hanson resident, and someone else has an issue, and Hanover rolls in, you're paying Hanover's rate,
Right.
not Hanson rate. So that will have.
And that mutual aid happens a lot.
Right, it's just the agreement, so you may be leaving from Hanson, but you may not be in a Hanson ambulance, so instead of the rate that we have, it could be a higher rate.
Sure.
So,
I know one day last week, they had 8 medical calls, one day, Thursday. And one, and there was some mutual aid in there. So I think just getting it up where we're competitive with everyone else.
And this is more of a systematic change of society that we have to
Yeah.
cover.
No, I agree, Matt, but I believe that there are some considerations sometimes taken.
Right. I just want to acknowledge that there are some folks out there in Hanson that may not be able to afford an ambulance, and they think twice
And the other
before
thing,
calling.
Matt, that I'll bring up is, did you notice the medium income in Hanson? I was pretty shocked at that,
That-
$106,000
Per household.
per household.
So you could have quite a few people in a household.
Right,
And-
but
and he made a
compared to
point
the
of
average in
saying
Plymouth
that.
County,
I have
though.
9.
Yeah, he made a point of saying that, so,
And Matt, I
Sorry to
only
get off
used the
track.
Uber once, and it was more convenient.
okay. No, I hear what you're saying, Matt, it's coming from a place of compassion, and I appreciate it, and, yeah, we'll take that, we'll take it under consideration. I think we already voted on it.
we have a motion, but we didn't
Well,
actually vote.
You didn't want to say yes this evening.
Okay.
Discussion.
Okay, I just want to say that this is to accept the new ambulance rates effective September 1st.
Okay.
That's what the motion was.
You have a second,
So
right?
we've got
Yes, I have Jim moving it and you seconding it.
Okay.
okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay,
And also, Jerry had a little press release to send out. I mentioned this way back in June when we first got the notice. This is from the Insurance Service Office.
Yes.
Notifying the town that it's improved its class from 4 to 2. And the reason for that are various components that we come in and get it scored on. The public protection classification program comes in, and they have an important role in underwriting insurance for the residents. And so what they do is they score you on emergency communications. The maximum number of points is 10 points for the communities overall, and they show how well the fire department and dispatcher fire alarms are working, from the emergency reporting system to communication center to computer aid dispatch and dispatch circuits, and how centers notify the firefighters about locations and emergencies. In the fire department, a maximum of 50 points of the overall score is based on the fire department. ISO reviews the distribution of the fire companies throughout the area and checks the fire department tests. It pumps regularly and inventories each of the engines and the ladders. So they look at the type and extent of training provided by the fire company personnel, the number of people who participate in training, the fire response to emergencies, and maintenance and testing of the fire equipment. And then the water supply. You don't even think that some of this stuff would actually come into play, but the water supply is an important component of that. And it's a maximum of 40 points overall. And because of the water department, it's a good job. the survey focuses on whether the community has sufficient water supply for water suppression beyond the daily consumption. And then they talk about the community risk reduction, and that section is a maximum of 5.5 points, resulting in a total of 105 points overall. So Hanson ended up moving from a class 4 rating for over 40 years and has now become a class 2 effective September 1st. And at the time of the press release went out, 47,500 fire departments across the country. Hanson will be one of 1,673 in the nation, and one of 21 in the state of Massachusetts to reach that ranking.
It's pretty
So,
amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
351 communities.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And he said the funding of
Yeah.
the deputy chief's position, which provided our community with a full-time fire prevention officer, as well as our members' dedication in training, fire safety education, pre-planning, were directly responsible for raising our department's score. However, this new classification truly represents the collaborative efforts of the Fire Communications Center and the Water Department, as well as the continued support of our citizens to provide the funding needed to operate our respective departments.
Good,
So,
very good.
Good
for
work
them.
by all involved. I think Jerry did briefly tell us about it one time when he was here, because
I think I mentioned it, and I said I wanted Jerry to talk about it, and then he was in and
Yeah.
out real quick, so we
Yeah.
didn't, he was waiting for the actual press release to come out.
Well, that's
So-
awesome. Okay, moving on. Old business. Approve and vote contract with municipal resources. It says resources.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I'm like, am I
I need an
misreading it,
assistant,
or
I
does
guess.
it,
You know, that's why I looked for it a couple times on the iPad.
Hopefully, we don't
I'm like,
need to have recourse, and it's gonna be a resource, but, so, as you will recall, those are that's the company that we voted to, use for our town administrator search, so you guys have got that in your packet. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And item 8 on old business, set salary range and approve job posting for town administrator. Mary, did you want to cue that up?
I have a couple of different salary surveys we put together. I had done my own due diligence in so the numbers I have on this particular one is not very many towns. I have Abington, Dayton, Halifax, Hanover, Hingham, Norwood, Norton, Norwell, Pembroke, and Whitman. And that is the salaries you see in this survey are current for FY '20.
And those are all towns that have.
A
do not-
comparison,
So are we saying comparison as in number of citizens, comparison as in have a regional school district and would not therefore be responsible singularly for the budget for the school?
no,
et
these
cetera, et
are
cetera?
ones I sent out as part of a town administrator thread that they have a South Shore
Okay.
managers meeting, so some of these are managers, and the range from, population goes from 8,100 in Dayton to 24,000 in Hingham.
Mhm.
So, but Hingham is at
We are
160,000.
clearly
Yeah,
not
no.
comparable to Hingham,
No.
for a variety of reasons, but.
But we have
Yeah.
Pembroke, which is at 143.7, Whitman is 128, Hanover is at 150, we're still not Hanover either. Abington is 145, and it just shows the history, how long they've been the town administrators in those communities. I received a salary survey from Clifford and Kenny Labor Council. That's the one, the print is so small you probably can't read, and I didn't bring my reading glasses, so I can't read it to you now either. But that was for fiscal year 19. and
Can you read the
information-
average?
No.
Oh, the average is, the average is
Sorry.
139.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Kids, we gotta love them. And then the other one came from MRI, and they gave us some communities with regional schools in that in mind. Originally, they came in at like 135. They recommended maybe 135. I told them we were looking for something, and then I sent them my data, which was the most recent data, and they thought 140 to 145 and recommended that we advertise at 145. You don't necessarily have to give 145 because you may get somebody who's, doesn't have, as much experience, but you will bring in a wider pool of candidates to interview. And then they, as I said, during the process, they would speak to them and say, what is it that you're looking for? If somebody comes and say they're looking for 160, they're not gonna make it this far.
Where I'm coming from is we have historically seen, we've had significant turnover in that role. We have got to stabilize this. We have got to attract the right person who wants to stay for a while. And we're not gonna do that by being penny wise and pound foolish. Because for the, say, $5,000 to $10,000 more that we're saying we might be even thinking about paying versus what we were paying, you could get a whole different skill set, a whole different commitment level, and I really think we need that. So I want to have a higher salary. I'm not sure how high. I definitely would like to talk to you guys about that.
Well, I would like to put it at the, put the range like we've been doing in the past, but I'd like to have the high range at the 145. Doesn't mean we pay that. If we get an assistant, town administrator, let's say that applies for the job, we don't have to pay him that much, but certainly, 145 is gonna draw some good
You're
candidates.
saying 145 for a
Max.
seasoned,
Right, but I'm
extremely
saying a range, so we're gonna
experienced-
pay between, and I don't know, between 130 and 145, whatever that range is. And obviously, they're the experts that were here in front of us, but we've gotta increase, 100%, we've gotta increase the salary. It's just not enough.
Guys, Jim,
I agree.
Matt?
The big thing is, as long as Todd says it's something that we can sustain, and looking, if we're looking for someone to be longevity here, can we sustain a 2%, 3%, 4% raise within the 10 years? Is that something sustainable for the town of Hanson?
I think you asked him that, or
I
Mary
did ask Todd today, because
Yeah.
I saw Todd today, and Mary and I were talking about it, and he didn't think it was a problem. I don't want to speak for him, but he didn't grasp his heart and say, my God, no, we can't do
Right.
that,
Right, and Todd and I have had conversations as well, and he agreed, you need to kick it up to anywhere from
East Bridgewater just advertised for the same position, and they advertised at 140.
Yeah.
East Bridgewater is pretty comparable to us. So I just think we have to step up and get some good talent.
And I mean,
Like I
some
said,
of
we
us-
can use that range so
Yeah.
we can,
I think if you're
figure
looking at
out-
some of these, the ones on the low range, you're looking at people who have been in the job, and as we all know, when you stay in the job, you get penalized,
Yeah.
because, you're gonna get nickel dime.
nobody's knocking on the door coming to
Yeah.
give you money.
Yeah, so, all right, so I'll entertain a motion, where do we wanna land on
I would
this?
do a max of 145. As far as the minimum, I would let these guys
Yeah,
tell
they
us.
don't put a minimum, they're just
Okay.
gonna say a maximum up
Perfect.
to 145.
Perfect.
So they aren't putting a range in there, just the.
So you've made the motion?
Yeah.
Anybody wanna second it?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay.
Great.
We're gonna
Did I
get
see the ad?
exactly the person we need.
I just,
Yeah.
yeah, I read it.
And
Oh,
on
you did?
Dropbox, you did,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Should've made a
Mary,
copy.
that brings us to the town administrator's report.
okay, I'll be quick, Jim.
I promise.
I promise. Yesterday, I received a letter of resignation from Gil Amato from the Board of Health, effective yesterday. The letter was dated, I think, the 22nd of August, but it was once it's stamped in at the town clerk's office. So we now have a vacancy on the Board of Health. This would be a joint appointment between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. And the appointment would be only until the May elections. Actually, Gil his term would have ended next year anyway. So, putting it out there, if anyone's interested in serving on the Board of Health, get an application into me by September 20th. That way we might be able to do an appointment and have somebody in place. I hate to leave them with just two members.
So we could
And no
appoint
agent.
somebody for the rest of Gil's term.
Yes, it would be Arlene, and Dennis would sit with us, and, I'll get the applications in, send them out to the board members, they can review them, we can bring them, the applicants in, interview them, and then they can make a decision on who they appoint.
It's a critical, board. I mean, you're dealing with Triple E, you're dealing with the transfer station, I mean, the number of things, it just goes on and on and on, and you know, we really, and I know you haven't been you've been without a health agent, and, you know, and it was you and Gil for quite a while, so I hope we can get a third member in there for you. Okay, well, we'll put that appeal out there and hope that somebody responds.
Right. The Conservation Commission, after Mike left, I sent an email out to all the departments saying, give me a prioritized list of things that Mike has been working on. The first thing I got back from the chairman of conservation was, we need a conservation agent.
Mhm.
So I advertised the position, and we got 2 applications. Phil and I interviewed the applicants, and I made a recommendation to the Conservation Commission for the appointment of Frank Skellinger. He had been on the Conservation Commission previously. He has a great educational background, and he's actually worked as a conservation agent on an interim basis over in Norwell when they were down a member. So he brings, you know, great knowledge. Having been a member, he knows the town. He will be a good fit. That's a part-time position of 19 hours. So I'll be working with Todd to get that straightened out. You know, I called and told Frank that I was making the recommendation, and Conservation was going to be voting tonight to affirm my recommendation. In light of the retirement of the administrative assistant, which is a shared position between Conservation and the Planning Board, there's going to be discussions about what we want to do. We may, the current person feels as though we should leave it the way it is, but we got some feelings from planning members and even conservation that maybe this is a time to split it.
Mm-hmm.
When we put it together years ago, it was a financial situation. Not that we're in a great financial situation right now, but what we don't want to do is, you know, maybe hire somebody for 35 hours and say, oh, by the way, you know, we're going to cut you back to, you know, 24 or 19.
But
So
years ago, when we went down this path, if I recall, we had a full-time planner. And then we just kind of combined. So we're not really, I mean, yes, if you pull it apart, you still have part-time, but we're not going back to where we were before, which is full. That's not what
no,
you're
because
proposing.
what we had years ago is we had a full-time planner and a full-time conservation
Right.
agent. And each of those positions had a part-time administrative assistant, either 25 or 27 hours.
Yeah.
So then when the agent and the planner's positions were cut way back to part-time, they left, and out of necessity, we combined the 2 positions to one, a planner conservation agent, and the administrative assistant for the planning board retired. So, all right, so here you are, Becky, you know, good luck, you're gonna do both jobs. And, you know, 17 and a half hours for each department. And it's gone on, but as time goes on, we get the feeling maybe it's time to break it up, and with Becky leaving, this may be the time to break it up. But, so I'll be having a meeting after Frank comes on board with Deb, with a planning board member, and with the conservation, and see how they want to do this. So we may
But as
be
long
looking-
as we don't go over the hours that Becky's working, and we actually break it up into 2 part-time, help me do the math, how is that gonna cost us more?
Well, Becky feels, and again, I'm gonna have to speak to them and see how they feel about this, but Becky feels that it's, you know, 17 and a half hours is not gonna be enough in the office for conservation. She not only, you know, she does the day-to-day work, but she also has a meeting. So meeting nights can take, you know, 3 hours, and then you're spending an hour and a half or 2 hours just doing the minutes from a meeting. It doesn't give you a lot of time to do some of the other stuff.
But they haven't had an agent for a while either.
Correct. So I'm hoping that the agent will be able to pick it up. So it may be they get 25 hours, and I've spoken to Deb, and she says, you know, she may only need somebody 19 hours. So we'll be adding a few more hours, maybe 10 hours on the other end. So we'll have on the in the supplemental budget, we'll put in some funding, additional funding, maybe in for planning, and, you know, because we already have it funded for 17 and a half hours in conservation. So Todd and I will work through that, but I'm not going to make this decision. These are the people who are going to be working in these departments, and how do you feel about it? And if they say, we think it's going to work out fine, we'll just leave it the way it is, and so be it.
And I definitely would defer to them because, obviously we're trying to support them.
Right.
I think the one thing to keep in mind is if we're getting somebody from outside, the likelihood of getting an admin that's gonna be equally versatile, enough to be able to handle the needs of conservation and planning, which are sometimes competing entities.
Right.
Is pretty slim. Becky was a rarity because she had come up through the conservation ranks and then took on planning. So that's something to kind of keep in mind.
Right. It may be a lot for one person. So that's where I'm going with that. I met with Todd, and actually Jerry came in today very briefly because we had a bid opening for the door replacements that we had funded back in May. And we only received one bid, so we're awarding the bid to overhead doors out of Rockland. I think we have 65,000 set aside, and the bid came in at 61. So we'll be able to move forward with that and get that project done, and hopefully we can get that done before the cold weather gets here. At Household Hazardous Waste Day, I'm just throwing this out there, it's up on the website, but Hanson is not hosting one this year, but there will be one in other communities. And Hanson's event, which is in conjunction with Whitman, will be on September 7th at the Whitman Highway Garage. Any community can go to the other ones, but you have to go in with proof of residency.
Yes.
So, because I did actually have some people calling me today looking for that. And we've already talked, did we talk about this, the part of the announcements?
No,
we
because
didn't do the
we
announcements.
skipped
Okay,
over
we
it
did.
in my zeal to get right down to business. we
Don't
skipped
remind
over
her, Mary.
Okay, sorry.
So,
I knew we talked about it, but.
Anyone bring that up?
No, sorry.
We talked about it.
We did.
We did, absolutely.
no, I think I know what you're gonna talk about, and I don't wanna skip over it.
No, I think this is
Yeah.
kind of important, and it's actually
Yeah.
up on our website. It's doxo.com.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it is not affiliated with the town of Hanson in any way, although it will say, pay your Hanson bills at this website. We are not associated with them. We still pay through Unipay. So you have to go on the town website to link in to pay your bills. And this was brought to my attention because somebody saw it actually on Pembroke's website as well. So just be cautious when you go to pay your bills that you do it through the town website. Directly through the town website. Okay, and I think I'm done.
Okay, 200th anniversary, not much to report. We will be having Josh and Audrey, who were originally scheduled to come tonight. They'll be coming to our September 10th meeting to talk about upcoming events, fundraisers, and the events they're having throughout 2020. Final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, Matt?
As Mary mentioned last week, we don't have anything coming to the town meeting. We have discussed that we want to make sure we get a conceptual plan to show the town what we are hoping to do and have open meetings about it and get some feedback from everyone before kind of asking money for something that we're not really sure on.
Now, Matt, I hate to really give any credence to the rumor mill, but ever so often something really gets legs and takes off on us and starts running down the road. There seems to be a rumor that housing is being planned up at Plymouth County Hospital. Is that even on the table? Is that even anything you're discussing right now or thinking about it?
I've been attending these meetings now for a year and a half now. We have not discussed housing up there in the sense of building mass development or anything
Okay.
like that.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that. McQuon School Reuse Committee, have we heard from Keller Williams?
No, we need to have a chat with them.
Yes, we do.
They are looking for money to do a conceptual plan.
Yes, so
I am personally, I am not in favor of that. It seems to me that if we put an RFP out there, somebody's gonna come back and show us a plan. This is what we wanna do.
I agree.
I am not in favor of spending $9,500 to do a plan and tell them this is what we want.
I agree, I think you should push back on them.
Yes.
Yeah. Hanson School Repair Committee, we can take that off, right? Because we're not gonna have that committee anymore, and Mr. Garvey is going to join the Facilities Subcommittee. And so there we go. Mr.
Highway, we
Mitchell.
haven't met.
Okay.
Did we, the only thing real quick, are the minutes all set?
We didn't do
Thank
the
you.
minutes.
That's all.
Thank you.
Why would-
Did everybody have an opportunity to look at the
Yes.
May 30th minutes?
Yep.
And did anybody want to throw out a motion?
I think with one correction.
Okay.
I believe this is the minutes that I submitted, correct? So I think the only thing is there was one other attendee in that meeting,
If
and
you want to leave that on, I took that out.
oh, then that's fine. If you took it off, that's fine. Yep. I'm
Okay.
good.
right.
Motion to approve the minutes of May 30th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor? Fabulous. And then we are going to move into executive session to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, to wit, Greer Getson, Executive Assistant to the Board of Selectmen, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 93, Highway, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the public body and chairs, so declares. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn our regular meeting and enter executive session.
Roll call.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Roll
Roll
call
call. Roll call?
Yep, Jim's right.
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. That concludes our open meeting.